Bonsoir tout le monde. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the May 16th Special Council meeting. Item 1, roll call. All members of council are present. Adoption de l'ordre du jour. Motion d'adopter l'ordre du jour tel que présenté. Moved by Councillor Deakin, seconded by Councillor Ternosky. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 3, disclosure pecuniary interest. Hearing, seeing none. Item 4, reports from departments and council committees. Item A, water and sewer project in the 417 Industrial Park in the Township of Russell. Report PD 21-2023. The council received report PD 21-23 dated May 16, 2023, and approve option 3 of this report. Mr. Fawnin, this is almost a meeting 10 years in the making.
And thank you, Mr. Mayor. Unfortunately, I've only been here for the last year of it. Good evening, Mayor and members of council. A collaborative, connected, and sustainable community for everyone. That is the vision set by council for our community during this mandate and beyond. Along with that vision, there are a number of strategies which align with the presentation we are about to provide to council, but I want to highlight just one. That is strategy number 1. We will be known as a bold leader amongst our peers. De nombreuses discussions ont eu lieu au cours de la dernière décennie concernant les utilités de fournir l'eau et les égouts au parc industriel 417. Les arguments pour et contre étaient concentrés sur les utilités, c'est-à-dire la demande de marché, et les coûts associés avec un projet de cette telle grandeur. 10 ans plus tard, nous sommes toujours indécis, mais l'économie de marché a évolué et nous savons maintenant qu'il existe toujours une demande pour les terrains avec des services et sans services dans notre région. In effect, this discussion is much about economic growth as it is about economic diversification. A couple of points just to note before we make introductions. As you might be aware, the provincial policy statement is being reviewed. It's undergoing a refresh. This will have significant impact on official plans now and into the next decade. The refresh is intended to take effect in the fall of 23, and a few highlights are worth noting. First, that the minister will have the power to amend municipal official plans if the minister is of the view that a matter of provincial interest could be adversely affected. This is akin to a minister's zoning order. There will also be an elimination of intensification targets in the new policy statement. The growth plan will be repealed, and the ability to expand settlement areas, including forecasting, will fall to the municipalities. The concept of municipal comprehensive reviews of official plans has not been carried forward into the 2023 provincial policy statement. And finally, the definition of employment areas is proposed to be changed in both the Planning Act and the new policy statement. The focus will be on uses that cannot locate in mixed areas, such as heavy industry, manufacturing, and large-scale warehousing, basically meaning that there would be some constraints placed on what kind of businesses you can put in areas that are designated as trade and industry. We fully understand that there are many operational, administrative, and logistical challenges to overcome in an endeavor such as this. The presentation and discussion this evening, however, is intended to focus on the why, or perhaps better said, on strategic outcomes for our community, leaving the how for the administration, based on whatever direction that council provides, to begin the planning work as an operational task. Afin d'en finir avec la partie formelle de la présentation et avant d'entamer le dialogue, y compris d'éventuelles questions techniques ou financières, je recommanderais que nous attendions la fin de la présentation pour répondre aux questions du Conseil et des membres du public. Maintenant, je passe la parole au directeur de la planification et du développement économique, au directeur des finances et au directeur de l'infrastructure.
Merci beaucoup, Mr. Fawnin. Madame Tremblay.
Bonsoir.
Bonsoir.
So I would just like to introduce the team for the member of the public. So that worked on the report and is working currently with the 417 Industrial Park future and existing development. So I'm Dominique Tremblay for the Township of Russell. And just for your information as well, I invited Barry Nabashian from Shore Tanner, who produced the report that was attached to the report that was submitted to council for tonight's meeting. So if there's question that for market analysis, everything that is more specialized, then I ask for help. I called a friend. So basically, so we could basically have more specific discussion about the actual market and what's to come There's also Richard Godin, who's the treasurer of the Township of Russell, and Jonathan Bourgon that will be part of the presentation as well. So for the, if we could put the first slide of this presentation. So as mentioned, there was a report that was prepared by staff. The report was really extensive, so we've decided not to go over all the policies and guidelines, official plan and provincial policy statement to start with, but mainly focus for this presentation on the options that were evaluated by staff. So I just want to point out as well that there's many other options that were evaluated, but we decided to focus in the presentation for the 3 options that you'll see below. So option 1 is to provide water and sewer services to the entire industrial park. The option 2 that was evaluated was provided potable water only to the park. And the option 3 was to maintain the status quo for the existing section of the park, but to evaluate to move forward with full servicing on one section only. So the administration for each evaluation evaluated each option to identify opportunity and challenges for those options.
Excuse, Madame Tremblay. On pourrait-tu just put down one set of lights so the screen is a little bit clearer in the back?
The presentation is as well in French and English, so we'll
Flip-flop?
flip-flop.
On est franglais pur?
C'est ça.
Exactement.
OK.
OK. Parfait. Merci.
Donc, comme mentionné, l'administration a évalué chacune des options et a identifié les opportunités et les défis reliés à chacune des options, puis aussi les challenges financiers que chaque option en vont apporter. Donc, c'est ça qu'on va discuter de ce soir. Donc, je vais passer la parole à M. Bourgon qui va expliquer l'option 1, donc les terrains qui vont être desservis avec cette option-là.
Bonsoir, mon petit conseil. For option 1, land to be serviced, it's the land that we currently did our design to bring water and sewer. So you can see on the map right now, it's in order to service approximately 1,000 acres. We'll point out that for 3 options tonight, we're not including the City of Ottawa. We're looking to service only the land within the Township of Russell. So for our option 1, in terms of timing, by the end of the year, well, I should start by saying like there's several easements to acquire in order to start the construction of this project. Some to bring the sanitary line to service existing land, and also to bring the force main all the way to the Russell Lagoon. So in terms of timing, remaining of this year, 2023, will be to finalize our the drawings to go to tender and negotiate all those easements. So pre-qualification for our contractor and tender will occur late fall, so bring us in January, into award the contract by March 24th. We're estimating a 2-year time frame to do the construction of that full servicing of the park. So all local sewers and water mains within the existing street, the water reservoir, and the pumping station. So so that would bring us for the first drop of water to be available at some point throughout 2026. So to discuss the opportunity and challenge, I'll give the mic back to Mme Tremblay.
So obviously, this option is provided with a lot of opportunities. So this option will provide, as mentioned by Jonathan, water and sewer to the park. So that would be including the existing and the new section that would cover up about 1,000 acres of service land. Obviously, one of the biggest opportunity of having both services is that the fire protection in the area will now be assured by fire hydrant. So that means that there will not be a requirement anymore of on-site water supply. The option will also need to be no need to replace the older septic beds that are now required since we don't have any services, and therefore allow for increased lot coverage. The servicing could also allow for redevelopment of existing property. So that means if we decommission septic and well, then the existing property could look at severing their property and sell it to other businesses. And obviously, the adequate infrastructure would, as mentioned earlier, would increase density and diversity for commercial and industrial development, resulting in additional employment and tax revenues. So for the challenges of servicing the park, as mentioned, there are several easements that would need to be acquired for a sanitary system from the industrial park to the Russell Lagoon. There's already a lot of industrial park that was already developed as an industrial use, and property owner have already invested a lot of money in the on service, so on septic well and fire tank protections. In order to execute the scenario that was also identified in the financial report of Hemson, there's a requirement that will have to be focused on selling properties that are smaller in size. So that means that we would be focusing on selling property to businesses that would require 5 acre and less in size. There's also potential of losing existing businesses that don't require water, that would not want to pay the fee, so they could probably find other parks in the area that don't offer services to exempt those businesses from the cost of servicing. There's also delay of construction. So as we speak right now, there's 6 site plans that has been reviewed and there are under construction or close by to start construction, though that means with the timing of bringing services, they wouldn't want to install septic and well and wait for the services, so that could create delays for existing businesses. And the last point and challenge that we would want to point out in this option is that the servicing of the park will potentially take away water and sewer capacity for residential growth in Russell if the township was unable to secure added capacity with the City of Ottawa. The expansion of the Russell Lagoon will also need to be initiated during the servicing project. So as you know, we just expanded our village boundary of Embrun and Russell to include 400 new acre of potential growth. So that could affect the potential of servicing, take away some of the capacity from the existing and the future growth of the both villages. So I'll now ask Mr. Godin to go over the financial aspect of this option.
Merci, Madame Tremblay. Bonsoir, chers membres du Conseil. So quickly, I'll just go through the next 2 slides, which is essentially a very high-level image of the financial numbers for this project. So this option has been costed to, we're expecting it to cost about $47 million, which represents about $47,000 an acre if we're looking at the full build-out. Of that $47 million, about $30 million of it is going to have to be supported by the township. So this represents the portion for lands that we own or for lands that will be developed in the future that are currently vacant. Next, I'm just going to run through the financial benefits. So for each option, you'll see that we've listed the 40-year net benefit. So what we mean here is essentially over the next 40-year period, the 40-year net benefit represents the amount of revenue that we're going to be receiving on top of, like, over and above what it's going to cost us. So for this particular option, for option 1, we're looking at a 40-year net benefit of about $31 million. And we're expecting it to take about 22 years to break even, meaning that our initial investment will have been recovered after the 22nd year of the program. It is definitely important to note that there are a lot of variables that are outside of the control of the township, and we are looking at a long year period. So a lot of things can go very well, a lot of things can go less well. So those numbers could fluctuate greatly, but those are the numbers that we are expecting based on the data that we have at our availability right now. For the next slide, we're just going to talk about debt and cash flow and the challenges associated to that. So if we were to not have any other funding outside of the current plan, we would be required to borrow approximately $38 million to be able to move forward. We do have a debt capacity that needs to be respected from the province, and currently, and with our discussions with Infrastructure Ontario, we would be able to borrow about $77 million in total. But we also have to remember that we have a financial plan for a rec complex, and as part of that financial plan, we do have a commitment or an intention to borrow, to have a short-term loan of about $75 million. So this kind of illustrates the main challenge in regards to cash flow and the fact that it's next to impossible to proceed with this project without borrowing within our borrowing capacity. We also want to list highlight a few of the financial risks associated with this type of projects. So like I said earlier on, it's a very long-term project, or a long-term outcome. There are some rising inflation and interest rates to consider. There's always the potential of, when we have a lot of stakeholders, negotiating challenges and things of the sort, and potential slowdowns in the economy, which could eventually lead to either a lack of demand or a slowdown in development, which could impact the bottom line numbers at the end of the day. So essentially, this was the financials for option number 1. In the presentation, we do have 3 options. Option number 2 is to provide potable water only to the park. We wanted to keep it in here and in the report for information because it was something that was considered. But for this presentation here at council, we'd like to pass over it and go to option 3, which will be about 5 or 6 slides ahead. Juste la map avant. C'est ça. Puis je vais laisser la parole à M. Bourgon pour parler de l'option 3.
Donc, pour l'option 3, on regarde apporter l'eau ou on propose d'apporter l'eau et égouts pour les terrains futurs. So you can see here, highlighted in blue, would be the future land that could be serviced with water and sewer. So this option would not bring water and sewer to everything that's in green. So the existing property and as well as the ones to the west. So it's only that corridor along our Route 100 or our road allowance that we do own and on the east side of Saint-Guillaume. In terms of timing, if that option would be to proceed, we're looking at a similar time frame as we had in option 1. So this year to complete our design and secure easements only for the force main. In this case, there's no need for local servicing since roads will be built as needed basis with water and sewer. And then we're still looking at a 18 months to a 2-year time frame for construction. So the main difference here is to focus on the future, so what's not developed currently. And again, I'll pass the presentation to Mme Tremblay.
Donc, dans cette option-là aussi, il y a des opportunités, des défis. Donc, la première opportunité que cette option-là nous apporte, c'est qu'elle exigera aucun investissement immédiat de la part des propriétaires existants et actuels dans le parc industriel. The next phase of the developed and sold in the near future will generate faster tax revenue, employment, and positive impact. We could continue using the selection criteria to sell properties to companies that will generate, again, tax revenues and increase job creation. We could continue to offer on-service property, which are high demand in this area, with expected more businesses from Ottawa to relocate to the park due to the high and further increased cost of the industrial land in Ottawa. This option will also allow construction projects currently under site plan review and under construction to continue, resulting, again, in more immediate tax revenue. And under this option, the township will be in a position to offer 2 types of development. So we will have one without services and one with services. And obviously, we could allow the retail component of development. So as you know, right now, because we don't have services, retail is not a permitted use in our zoning bylaw and in the county official plan. So with allowing services, then the retail component could be added to the permitted list of uses. So the challenges that this option would be to consider is that based on the average size of the existing land parcel, we expect that many of the businesses selecting lands of their investment will be in land intensive. This model sees much of non-serviced area resulting in fewer job per hectare. So meaning when we have services, we could densify. So obviously without services, we expect to keep going the way that we're doing right now. Cette option n'est pas optimale en termes d'intensification et de diversification. The option to service the land north of Route 100 and east of Saint-Guillaume will likely need to be conditional on an upfront investment by a private sector investor to cover the cost of bringing services to those sections that are identified in the map that we just saw. And this option is also retained. Some of the parcel of land will also have to be redesignated from agricultural to industrial. So those are lands that are not designated at the moment. So Mr. Godin will cover the financial portion for this option.
Merci, Madame Tremblay. So for this particular option, the cost, as you can see, goes down to about $28 million. So it's a significantly less expensive option, if you will. The financial benefits, so this is an option that was kind of added as a consideration at the end of the process. So we do have further analysis and hypotheses to verify and to make sure. But there is potential. Essentially, the principle of this option is to not move forward unless we have secured the upfront financing. So it reduces the risk significantly. And given that with the upfront money and with the lack of borrowing and having high interest costs, we are seeing a net benefit that could move upwards of $40 million. Again, that's over a 40-year period, and it's still based on a lot of unknown variables. There is no break-even year in a sense, since we're not really fronting any major investment in this option. As far as the debt or cash flow goes, again, there's no real need for long-term borrowing for this option, so the impact is minimal. There could be some internal borrowing or some construction loans required as we go along if ever we have to, if we purchase and sell land. But nothing that we anticipate will impact our borrowing capacity. But again, for financial risk, we are still identifying that there are a lot of unknown variables. So the net benefit of the project is subject to fluctuation based on the market and those different variables. One of the other risks is the reluctance on the part of the private sector to partner up with the township. So this could have an impact on timeline and on when we could actually see development move forward. Donc, la prochaine diapositive. So the next slide, we just have a summary of the financial implications. So basically just a table comparing the three options and the different numbers that I've gone through with council tonight. Donc, je crois qu'on peut passer à la prochaine diapo pour Madame Tremblay, qui est notre recommandation de l'administration.
So based on the analysis that the administration provided to council, we recommend that the option that would be retained is option 3. So that means not servicing the existing part of the industrial park, but servicing the land that are located north of Route 100 as identified in option 3. Donc, la recommandation de l'administration face à ce qui a été proposé puis regarder en détail des options, c'est de procéder avec l'option 3, telle qui a été présentée dans la présentation et dans le rapport, de ne pas desservir les terrains qui sont existants, mais de se concentrer sur la portion qui est localisée des terrains le long de la route 100, puis du côté est de la rue Saint-Guillaume, du chemin Saint-Guillaume. Donc, la prochaine diapositive.
Merci, merci à toute l'équipe qui a fait beaucoup d'ouvrages. Il y avait plein de discussions depuis la dernière année, par exemple, to arrive at this particular moment in time. And just before we go into the discussion, I just want to revisit a couple of comments that I made at the introduction. We believe in the administration that tonight is about strategic intention. It's about getting clear direction from council with regard to the strategic direction for the industrial development and by extension the commercial development of the community. We understand that there's some serious challenges to face. Any project, whether it's worth its salt, is of course challenging and difficult. In this case, there are certainly financial challenges, there are operational and planning challenges, there are logistical challenges, there are challenges to deal with community members as we move forward. But that, to us, is the how, and that's what you hold the administration accountable for. And for that reason, we came to option 3, which we believe is the best of the options available to us to provide both support to existing businesses who either elect not to be serviced and or would be prohibitively expensive to move towards servicing, but to provide opportunities for development not only now, and we talk about the area we're proposing to service now. that area effectively sets the conditions for future expansion of industrial and trade capacity in the township after this particular phase is completed. And with that, I defer to council for discussion and questions.
Thank you, Mr. Fonin. Thank you very much, l'administration. I know it's been a long, I'll say, couple of months, but this has been going on for years and years and years. I look at the size of this project and an old story comes to mind. How do you eat an elephant? You eat it one bite at a time, and that's what we're faced with. This might seem like an elephant, but you know, there's, as the administration said, there's challenges, but there's ways to address those challenges. So before we move on to questions from members of council and then eventually questions from members of the public, I just want to resume a few things. Read this report and other reports since 2013-14 now. So essentially, first thing is to decide for this council is, are we eliminating Ottawa from the equation? I think that's, for me, that's a no-brainer. I think the staff have shown, we've had discussions with Ottawa, that doesn't seem to be going anywhere in regards to servicing north of the 417 or any lands on the Ottawa side. So for me, that won't be an issue. The other issue is the existing built-out area, the existing park, if you will. Staff, our recommendation, we don't move ahead with the existing park, and I understand the reasoning why. Obviously, a lot of people have invested in their businesses, private systems in place, and it would be a significant cost to bring servicing to that area. Not only that, I think there's actually a challenge in the Municipal Act that we're not allowed to actually bonus businesses, so I'm not even sure if legally we would be able to give a discount to existing businesses, which poses its own challenge. So is that fair to say that's pretty much, we're not servicing Ottawa, we're not servicing the existing. Now, when we say the existing, in the administration's case, you're suggesting everything north of everything north of Saint-Guillaume, including the areas that are existing but have not been developed currently. Is that correct, Madame Tremblay?
Maybe I could suggest that we put the map back.
Sure. Good idea.
So the option one, so it's-
That's the one.
yeah.
So you're proposing with option 3 to eliminate the 3 stars to the left and the purple areas on the top, correct?
I'll answer positively. We're excluding the 331 acre. So that would not be serviced.
Right, but in option 3,
Yeah.
you're not proposing the
We're not proposing to service 119 and 48 acres. We're proposing to service the 100 and the 50 that are located south.
right, everything at the bottom.
Yeah.
So not the 3 stars on the left and not the 2 purple on the left, correct?
However, I would like to mention that we're proposing as well to include the 41 acre and the stars on the east side of Saint-Guillaume.
Right.
And the yellow.
Okay, perfect. So that brings it down to a total of 447, I think it was, correct?
If we could go, sorry, Louis.
To the next one?
Yeah, to the next slide. The last map.
417.4.
So this one, so it's 417.4, you're correct.
Okay, perfect. So again, we're not discussing the how, we're discussing the why. So I'll open it up to the floor to members of council to see questions. Who wants to take a crack at it? Anyone? Going once? Councillor Deacon?
I could be cheeky and say why not, but in all seriousness, just a couple of small questions maybe to get us started. So if services were brought to any sections of the industrial park in the red there or the blue, is there a possibility for nearby residents to also hook up? What would be the relationship there to the residential that's few but still around there?
Mr. Fana and Monsieur Bourgon?
So at this time, it's the residents are not considered part of the servicing of the park.
If they were to be included, obviously, they would be paying their fair share of per acre cost.
If
If they were-
If it's if it's direction or decision by council, yeah, they would need to pay their share.
Okay. Okay. Other questions? Conseiller Lorrain?
Yeah, so my question revolves around the some of the 331 acres. I understand the stuff that is not circled. If you go up to the
Previous map?
previous map, under option one, I apologize. Right there. So on the left-hand side of the 331, where all the roads are in green, I believe that would be considered the newer section of the existing park, and then everything that's in white on the right-hand side of that up to St. Guillaume is the older section of the park. So I want to just focus on the left side for a minute. Under those agreements, were they not signed with the option or the requirement to get water if we were to get water? And if they were, why would we not try to include them in that section?
Madame Tremblay?
So the first question, the answer is yes. So they had I'm not quite sure about the most right side of the most left side. So, but most of them in that new section, yes, in the purchase agreement, they had the obligation to connect when services would be available.
Okay. And did we examine what that cost would be for this, if that was to be included in the serviced area?
So I'll start the answer, but maybe Jonathan could add more to the answer, but that would be option one.
Well, but excluding the existing park is option one as well?
No, option one is everything.
Is everything?
Yeah, so you have everything included in option one. So everything that you see in color and future stars, it would be serviced in option one with water and sewer.
Okay. So maybe I'll phrase it the other way then. How many acres are we talking in the original park that's in the right-hand side section that could be excluded from this project?
Madame Tremblay?
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor. So just to the older section, if you wanted to have that acreage out of the.
Correct.
I could provide you with the answer.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
I just want to point out, though, that one of the major obstacles in regards to financing is being proposed is nothing's going forward unless people are paying up front. Right? So that's the existing and the old. So if we decide to include existing properties, everybody will be required to pay their fair share up front before we actually do anything. Similar to when we expanded I believe it was the Emblem Lagoon. We had to work with all the developers. All the developers had to pay for their share of the lagoon up front so that it could actually go ahead, because if there was no upfront cash, nothing was going ahead.
So that's a good segue to my next question is in that 47 million cost of number one, just as an example, that includes the expansion of the Russell Lagoons and the construction to bring the water and like all of it, all included, or is there pieces that are not included in that 47 million?
Monsieur Tremblay, Godin, Madame Tremblay, excuse-moi, Monsieur Godin, Monsieur Bourgon.
Merci, Monsieur Mayor. So, in that $47 million, everything to service the park is included except the expansion of the Russell Lagoon.
Okay. So obviously I would assume that the capacity required for water and sewer would be a potential obstacle for this project either way, if we were to service it completely. So my question becomes where are we getting the money for the expansion of the lagoon, and where are we getting, and how are we going to get the additional capacity to ensure that our residential growth doesn't get impacted down the road?
Mr. Fon and Monsieur Bourgon, we're now in the how.
Sorry, can I just provide yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I acknowledge the question. The fact of the matter is the lagoon will need to be expanded anyways, because as we continue to expand residential areas, we know that we have to do that. So that, to me, is a separate discussion and initiative that would have to be addressed regardless. So in terms of the other things that we will have to do to expand our community over the next 20 years, obviously the lagoon is one of them. The discussions with Ottawa for more water for our residential expansion, and possibly now expansion of the water and sewage capacity for the industrial. So just to keep it at that, I would suggest keeping it at that strategic level. The short answer is yes, of course, we would need to have to go to
Right,
discussion with
my-
Ottawa for expansion of water, and we would need to look at the lagoon. But the lagoon isn't necessarily part of this particular project. It's a consideration in the subsequent requirement to have the continuing ability to expand our residential space.
Because in essence, we could service 1,000 acres of land, doesn't necessarily mean that it'll be all serviced. If we expand the system to 1,000 acre and there's no growth and residential growth maxes out, we're still going to have to expand the system on the residential side. So it's not a matter of if we're going to have to deal with water for expansion of the lagoon or more water capacity, it's when.
Right, but my question lied in who's paying for it? Right? Is this on the back of the residential developers that are going to pay for the expansion required to service the park? Right? Because I understand if we're gonna grow from a residential perspective, then yes, the current developers would pay for that expansion of the lagoon because they are the ones benefiting from that development. But if we're taking capacity for the lagoon, that was capacity for the residential development, then at some point in time, we're gonna get a bottleneck. And who's gonna pay for that? And that's what I wanna make sure is that we're not pushing everything to one group to service residential and the industrial, when the industrial services strictly the industrial growth, not a residential.
Mr. Fon and Monsieur Godin?
Merci, Monsieur Mayor. So those are all great questions and obviously important considerations. For the lagoon, our expectations, it would form part of a DC. Would it be an area-specific DC, or would it be part of the general DCs? And for properties new properties in the park to pay into that DC, those are the specifics that we will need to analyze and decide on. But definitely, the development charges are the tool that would be used to fund the lagoon.
Okay, thank you. I'll defer to somebody else and I'll come back to another question, if that's okay.
Other questions? Councillor Tarnowski?
Merci. Alors, question pour Monsieur Godin. So the shortfall here, based on option one, is $30,926,000, $31 million. I just wanted to try to make sure that I understand. That $31 million, which would be the share for township, includes land to be developed and future land. So is it safe to say that the sale of that land would go against that 31 million?
Monsieur Godin?
Yes, through Mr. Mayor, so that's correct. So land sales would go towards refunding that 38 million.
Follow-up?
So there is, and we understand that the price per acre in a serviced land versus unserviced land is very different as well. Okay, so we haven't really looked, so as we develop this, so this 31 million, for simplicity's sake, really if we are able to sell the land serviced or unserviced, as we've heard in the past, we should be able to do a lot better than that, right? Like in terms of shortfall. Now, I understand there's no guarantees or anything, but based on what we've been told so far, that there is a lot of demand for that land, serviced or unserviced.
Monsieur Godin?
Through Mr. Mayor, so I think if I answered correctly your question, so we could do better. The $31 million is essentially just the cost of the construction, right? Or the township share of the cost. For the $47 million is the total cost, which we will need to pay and get a portion back. As we sell lands, we will be using it to pay that down. But on the cash flow side, on the cash flow slide, when I mentioned that we were required to borrow $38 million, it's essentially short-term borrowing because we are anticipating that those revenues will come in as we sell lands, as construction proceeds and tax revenues come in. And that's how we end up having a net benefit of almost $32 million after 40 years. But we are anticipating, though, that it will take 22 years to recover the full investment, the full initial investment, by recuperating those, by having those land sale revenues and by having some tax revenues once the development occurs.
So, just to clarify, this is a short-term problem. We have to carry the cost. Essentially, all the land, whether we own the land or the landowner's land, the end user will end up paying for this service at one point in time. It's just until that point, we would be carrying the cost if we decided to move ahead without having upfront agreements, correct?
That's correct.
Councillor Larrain?
So as part of the, if we go down to the other map now, if the 50 acres that is ours, that we currently own on the bottom side, which is part of the 150, so we own the 50 to the right, obviously that would be the cost that we're carrying for the 22 million, I would assume, in option number 3, is to service that 50-acre parcel. Could somebody or us, whoever owns the 119 and the 48, whoever owns that, would they be able to ever tap in to that pipeline if they so chose to do so? Like if we were to sell off the 48 acres of land that we own just to the north, just to the north, that first 48-acre parcel as an example, and somebody wanted that whole 48 acres, could they tap into that once we had built it and pay for it on their own?
Monsieur Bourgon? So essentially, the lands to the north that are not currently sold, could they connect if we brought it to the south?
We own, yes.
So the ones that were currently, like in the
Purple.
unserviced areas?
Yes.
Yes. So when we go look at the other map, the 2 parcels in purple that we currently own.
We wouldn't, like, it would need to be designed accordingly, or at least for as an example, the reservoir that could be expanded.
Right.
But at this time, for option 3, that's what we're presenting, but obviously,
That's-
there would be adjustment to be made.
So it would be possible. So I just want to clarify one thing for the existing owners. I know there's many existing owners here for the older section or the built-up section. Once we design this system to do everything but the existing, they will not have the ability down the road to ever connect, correct? Or the cost to connect down the road would be so exorbitant that chances are they will never connect. Is that correct? Is that safe to say, Monsieur Bourgon?
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Pretty much where we would not be designing the infrastructure to service the existing property.
Okay, just so, Mr. Fondon?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So during the discussions and the lead up to this, there was discussions, and I'd certainly invite questions, hopefully from the members of the public. There was a lot of discussions with existing and potential future owners. There was no consensus. There was certainly no aggregate consensus with regard to servicing those who had existing facilities that they had set up. Some were quite opposed to being imposed to have servicing thrust upon them, even though it's in the contracts. Some were neither here nor there, and some said, yeah, we'd love it, and we're willing to take on some of the costs. So that's something that, but we did not get a consensus opinion, which means in terms of imposing it subsequently, and to Mr. Bourgon's point, yes, it's not impossible to do, but the price would be exceptionally greater to retrofit effectively to get servicing to the existing than it would be to get servicing onto virgin land. So that's a consideration, and hence why option 3 was proposed, was the ability to A, pursue existing sales in the unserviced areas which are remaining in high demand right now, and of which we have entrepreneurs who are interested in that land, but to still move concurrently towards creating a project to service the land which is not yet developed, to set those conditions for subsequent develop down the road, which would require negotiations with Ottawa for capacity, likely upgrades on the lagoon system as well. But again, we're setting that condition now. So just to keep in mind, for the existing, there was not a consensus view with existing entrepreneurs with regard to the desire to have it or not have it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fonin. Other questions, comments, members of council? Conseiller Lalonde?
You know, in the option 3 that has just a section of the undeveloped area being prepared for water and service, water and sewer, is there any consideration that existing, and this is in part in connection with Councillor Lauren's comment question, could there or would there be opportunities for existing property owners in the unserviced area who I understand in some cases have an interest in also getting services, that they would have some sort of opportunity to I don't know, a first refusal or an opportunity to get in on the what is expected to be the serviced area?
Madam,
Should I rephrase that?
No, I think as mentioned earlier, like there's many options that were evaluated, and I think if we want to offer servicing and I don't want to speak for Monsieur Bourgon, but if we want to offer servicing to existing and future, the best option is option 1, right? So it's hard to design something in case of. So if we want to offer services to existing, then council would have to move forward with option 1 in this case. The option 3 was for us to answer the market demand on still offering properties that are bigger in size and would be available for property as soon as tomorrow, and also offer services, land in the future. But if we want to start offering to existing to be connecting, then the option would be to move forward with option 1.
so I just want to follow up on that. As much as I'd love to say we can sell the land tomorrow, technically we could, but the OP is not approved. Therefore, we still have to wait for OP approval before construction can start in those areas. Is that correct?
Yeah, we could. This would be the best way to do it. However, there's a conditional sale that could happen. That would be one of the conditions that we have the OP approved. So the approval of the OP is not going to change anything in the sense that we're not impeding the decision of what land are designated. That would not change by the fact that it's not approved or not.
Right.
The only thing is conditional for how many times, how long, I don't know, because we're still waiting for that OP to be approved, but it could be done as a conditional sale.
Yeah, I'll just share one comment from me is when I look at if we can go back to the map, if I look at the purple areas that I know we have interest for, these businesses are going to pay for some kind of servicing. Whether it's private servicing or public servicing, they will pay for servicing. So I have a hard time understanding why we would not get that land on board right away so that it can help pay down that $28 million commitment right away. Based on your report, I think out of the 200 acres, there was 4 acres that said, no, we don't want it. There was about 100 acres that said, we want it. And the ones in the middle said, well, it doesn't really matter because they know they're going to be paying for services one way or the other. So for me, I'm okay with option 3. If we look at servicing the virgin land, I'll call it for lack of a better term, the virgin land that hasn't been developed yet, including in that. I believe, Monsieur Bourgon, correct me if I'm wrong, and I know there's still a lot of financial analysis that has to be done with this, but the 48 million to 28 million was essentially taking out 20 million for the existing developed area. So technically that land is in that calculation, correct?
Yeah, in terms of pricing, that was presented to council, yes. The 20 million difference was the local servicing on existing streets.
Yeah, and I think that was part of it since the very beginning of this initiative was to try and get as big a pie as possible so we could reduce the cost as much as possible on a greater per acre cost. Conseiller Larry?
Sorry, is the 20, so just for my sake, is the 20, we're talking the 20 million is the 331 acres of servicing? Because that's the existing park.
Yeah.
So I don't disagree that the 119 and the 48 should be included if we have, if they're not, if it's there and they want to, and they want the servicing. That's where I was saying, could we go up there if they wanted the servicing, and if most want the servicing, we may as well do it at the same time.
Yeah, if they want it, and I think that's the key issue, right? As Monsieur Fonin specified, last time we went out, some people wanted it, some people didn't want, some people wanted it based on costs, right? So again, I mentioned the Municipal Act does not allow us bonusing feature, so I don't think we can give a discount, even though they've invested significantly in their existing properties, right? And some of these companies just invested a year or two ago. So are we going to force them to jump into the pot? I think, well, that's a council decision, but in my mind, everything virgin land, I think that's what should be our target. I guess the first question is, do we want to bring services to this park? Do we see a future where these areas are serviced? In my opinion, yes. I mean, we had Plaza de l'Est that 15 years ago was looking for servicing. And we're going to have areas in the future that are looking for service land. We recently received an email from Infrastructure Ontario wanting a list of shovel-ready lands. We met the minister in Toronto, asked the question, what are companies looking for? They are looking for turnkey shovel-ready land. Is there a demand for unserviced land? Yes, there is. There's also a demand for service land. And if we're not ahead of the curve, then we're behind it. So I'll open it up to more questions. Councillor Lorrain?
So then wouldn't, ultimately in that scenario then, that the 3 stars on the left-hand side could then become your unserviced land that would be for people that didn't want services? If you're gonna service the 119 and the 48, and then everything at the bottom? Because the right stars are all included, right, in the 417, but the left stars are not included, so wouldn't that be then where your future development of unserviced requirements be?
Yeah, so I look
In
at
the
it.
scenario you just gave.
Yeah, so I look at it this way, right? There's 1,022 acres there. Remove the 331, that's almost your entire star area. Everything except the existing. So you're looking at 8, 112, 170, 185, 225, 290 almost. So those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stars are almost the entirety of the 331 acres. So as soon as you remove that 331 acres from the $48 million scenario, we just looked at servicing almost everything else for much cheaper. That's what I'm looking at. Now, obviously, we're talking, financing, there's challenges. We know that. It's a cash flow issue. So we have to go and find and make agreements with these landowners if they want servicing. We have I believe we had a report that said unserviced land is worth approximately $100,000 an acre. Serviced land is about $50,000 an acre. So, there's going to be some negotiation with existing landowners. And for those landowners who might be worried that they own that land and they're I'll say for lack of a better term, they have the stars on their land, whether we make a decision to service or not, that doesn't affect your property. It won't affect if you continue farming that land, it does nothing to your taxes, except the day you decide to sell, I can tell you won the lottery because that's going to be part of an industrial park area, and that land value is going to be through the roof compared to ag land right now. So the decision is, do we want to move forward or we not move forward? Monsieur Godin.
Merci, Monsieur Maire. I just wanted to mention, just before council makes a decision on this, and regarding those 2 purple lots, to include them or not in option 3. If council wishes to modify option 3, for sure that's your prerogative. So before you make that decision, though, I don't think we mentioned the why that we proposed that they are excluded. I might let Madame Tremblay speak on the Equidev side regarding the demand for unserviced land. On the financial side, I do think it creates an opportunity where we can have some investments earlier on and some sales from the wait list that's already waiting for some unserviced lands, and some taxes to be generated from those sales and constructions, which could help build up some funds to be able to invest into the servicing of the rest. So just wanted to provide context to council as to why that we didn't include
Yeah.
those initially.
Definitely.
I don't know if Madam Tabi has anything to add.
And
to that.
I understand that. I'm just looking at it saying, if we decide not to service that area, doesn't matter how much reserves we put aside, we just lost $10 million in potential, that can help pay for that $28 million system, right? That's what I'm looking at, is there's $10 million there sitting that can go towards that $28 million project. And in regards to the timing, I know that they're available to move right ahead, but realistically, Monsieur Bourgon says we're looking at 2.5 years to get services there, new construction. I'm not sure how fast they're willing to build. Are they going to be ready next year? Can they wait a year and be on public services? That's all discussions for EcoDev, because you're a great salesman. You've been doing a fantastic job. So I'm sure you can put contracts in front of us, but I'll let you continue, Madame Tremblay.
Doesn't happen often, but I don't know what to say. I just want to maybe add to what Mr. Godin just mentioned, is that the option 3 is that we were proposing to move with option 3 to have that upfront investment, right? To avoid us borrowing money. So we're the landowner of the 119 and 48 acres. If we want to move forward with servicing those property, we would have to sell the entire 119 and 48 to be able to have those funds and move forward with everything else. To have the upfront money, that doesn't mean that we're going to sell those property at $150,000 an acre. So that puts a lot of pressure on EcoDev to sell properties that would recuperate the amount of money that we need to move forward for servicing. So the $150,000 per acre that we're looking at probably selling those property based on the report that we've just received would not give us enough money to move forward to accumulate that amount of money, that the 10 million that you're just discussing, because we need to pay for the land that we've just purchased, and we need to pay for the road construction, hydro, Enbridge, so it doesn't leave us a lot of money left after that 150. So if we want to move forward and accumulate that money in order to move forward with services, then we were probably looking at selling around $250 to $300 an acre. So that leaves a lot of, am I going to find companies that are going to be able to find and sell those property to at $300,000 an acre?
Right. So in regards, when I say there's two factors here. There's a factor is, how are we going to do this? We still need to analyze the financial plan. If there's, per your report stated that we had over 225 acres of people ready to build now, and majority of that were okay buying with servicing. No, they didn't know the price, right? And that's fair. But I think we have time. Again, the OP is not approved. There's discussions at the county level to put a program in place to help with financing. That's not approved yet, but they're actually positive for once. I'm happy with that. So I think there's an opportunity here. So, I'm okay with option 3, keeping in mind we still have time to possibly include the scenario I just included. And that's what I'm asking, is give us time to see what else. There's a lot of moving pieces here. So I'm fine putting clauses in our contracts, that kind of stuff that says when the OP is approved, then council will have to make a final decision whether we've gathered financing or not. I need a number. That's what I'm looking for. How much do I have to go to make this happen? And once you give me that number, then that's my job to go get it. Mr. Fonin.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. So the number's 30 million.
Minus 10. Potentially.
Potentially. So the issue of adding the land, I would just caution the inability to subsequently sell that land tomorrow morning, hypothetically, having to delay and go into negotiations with potential business owners to buy it as serviced on a promissory that it'll be serviced, so conditional. I think that adds an additional risk from a sales development perspective. It slows things down. Now, there is concurrent activity as well, and as staff and I have discussed this, tomorrow morning is a new day, and there's a serious concurrent activity that has to occur. We have negotiations to do, we have easements to think about, we have to look at, contractors, we have to tender for contractors and project managers. So there's things to be done before a shovel hits the ground, and including, of course, concurrent to that is the sale. So if you're looking at a Gantt chart, you're seeing, 3 or 4 lines of effort that will be going on as of tomorrow morning, depending on direction. But that particular one, to include that, just adds in my opinion, a fairly substantive risk, that if council determines that to be a risk worth taking, then we add it to the list, but it just slows down the sales element of it. But yes, the payoff in the long run would be greater in terms of covering the costs. I don't know if any of you call.
So perhaps I can make a slight adjustment to that then, is that right now the system is 48 million for 1,000 acres. We remove that 331 acres, I'm being told it goes out to 28 million. That is correct. What I'm saying is then do 1,022 acres minus that 331 so that we have the same amount of capacity. Because if I look at the other map and we go to the 28 million divided by the 417, we've just increased the cost per acre 40%. We've gone from 48,000 to 67,000. So I'm seeing it from a per acre perspective, and I'm thinking for future growth, we need to make this as financially feasible for as many possible people as possible. So I think that as long as we're getting a system, roughly 20, 30 million, that maximizes it, I'm okay. Wherever else you want to do it. If you want to take the purple, the other 200 acres and future down the road, that's fine. You want to ignore the top, I'm fine with that. But the system has to be as wide as possible so we can lower the price as much as possible per acre resident. Conseiller Lorrain?
Yeah, you kind of just touched on it, but I just wanted to make sure, again, we were talking with the same numbers. Adding in the 2 purples up top to what is being proposed, which is the 417 plus the 119 plus the 48 is 584. So I think you're including the 3 stars on the left-hand side as well. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I'm saying, sorry, bring back that up. Right now, it's 417.4.
Right.
So what I'm saying, 222.05 minus 417.4, whoops. I'm saying for 28 million, we should be able to get at least 600 acres. So that's my hope. Obviously, that's a design, and that's where the questions come in. But the last thing I want to do is shrink the pie, and then everybody's share goes considerably higher. And then how is that helping the situation? Because I think if we do that, reality is we will never service any land because we'll price ourselves completely out of the market. Right? Because we're talking about 100,000 an acre, 150,000 serviced. Well, we just went from 48,000 to 67,000. So at minimum, we should be selling at 167 if we want to recoup our costs.
I think, Mr. Mayor, just on the other side of that, of course, is that if you don't have any unserviced land, you're already pricing yourself out of the market in regard to companies that don't need serviced land. So they may choose to go elsewhere. It's just it's a market risk.
Yep.
I wouldn't mind actually asking our esteemed guest to perhaps comment on the market demand issue.
Good day, sir.
Yes, hi, thank you. First of all, I want to let you know that I'm an economist and I'm very pragmatic, and I'm not here to change anybody's ideas. I'm here to answer questions based on research and experience that we have had with these areas. There has been a lot of discussion about cost and how much we should service or not, but there has not been much discussion about demand for serviced lands and demand for unserviced lands. Right now, there are 82 businesses, and at least 14 more are planning on coming here. For the Township of Russell, we know that most of the 82 people have come from outside, many of them from the city of Ottawa. And I think I can tell you with absolute certainty that there will be more people coming from Ottawa and elsewhere. And the question is, why why are they leaving Ottawa and coming here? The answer, to the best of my knowledge, and I've done a few of these studies in the last 2-3 years, is they are moving not because of service or lack of service. They are moving out because land is very expensive in Ottawa, and it's going to continue to be more expensive. There is strong demand for what we consider land-intensive types of businesses, which is most of what we have now. They are land-intensive. Small building, the rest of it is land. The demand for these is strong, and it's going to be stronger because you have many housing units that are being built, shopping centers, etc. In the last 10 years, at least 5,000 new homes have been built in the county. That's 5,000 more air conditioners, heating system, roofs that need to be repaired or built first and repaired. So the demand for these types of land-intensive businesses is here, and it's going to become stronger. Based on the information that I have and a number of examples I can share with you, the need is not so much for service versus unserviced land. The need is based on cost. What does it cost for traditional businesses, repair people, people who they have minor manufacturing? They want to be able to get the land. They do not necessarily need service, all of them, and they want to be able to continue to do business as the way they have been doing in the city of Ottawa or Montreal, but now it's too expensive for them. I admire your ideas and your enthusiasm for services, because when the land is service, it's really for high manufacturing, high technological types of businesses, the types that we have in the Canada businesses. That's really AI, that's digital, that's information technology. They need services, and they just need 200 square feet per person. Those businesses create a lot of development, a lot of employment, a lot more than the so-called land-intensive ones. But they are not the ones who are going to come here, because people in Ottawa, businesses in Ottawa, whether it's auto mechanic or light manufacturing or assembly, they are the ones who are looking for land, and your land, because your land has got the best part of it is that it's at 417 highway. It's just so unbelievably valuable and attractive. I have done 3 studies recently, without naming them, obviously, due to confidentiality. One of them is a mattress maker in an industrial park with services. They have recently decided to leave because they say that, we are paying a lot of money for services. We can just get, the only thing we need services for is the cover of the sheets and the cover of mattresses. We can just have a major laundromat to wash those for us. Then we can just go somewhere and do the rest of it without services. I have 2 other places, 2 other clients who are also doing the same thing. They are leaving their service lands to unserviced because they say we really do not need it. Now, again, I am not here to convince you one way or another. I'm just sharing what I know. Again, when your land is serviced, there is the cost of servicing, and then because the property values go up, taxes also go up. So the owners will have to pay twice more. The question is, can 1,000 acres of land be populated by businesses who can afford this? My answer to it is no. You cannot fill up your current industrial park with people who can afford services. The need is high for unserviced land. The need will be, you have to create that need. One of the things that I had recommended is for the township to hire a company that specializes in attracting high technology companies from Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, US and Europe to come here. And that will take time. That's not going to happen quickly. That will take 2, 3, 4 years. I think once you know you have a number of people who are going to absolutely need in service land, then it will be time to spend that money, because then you know that you're going to sell the land at a lot more than $500,000. In my report, I have identified 3 recent land sales, Eastern Ottawa, very close to you, only about 15 minutes drive. They have sold it for over $1 million an acre. That's service land. It's not that far from you when you service it, when there is need to service it, not servicing it without making sure that you have the need for it. Once you service it, you can easily get a lot more than $500,000 per acre. But in my view, based on what you have now, you are not going to fill up the park with service businesses. And quite frankly, I think that if you service the whole thing, you will lose more of the businesses than you can attract.
Right.
It's not because there's anything wrong with services. I think you are not there yet.
Right. So just to clarify, I'm not talking about servicing the existing, but you just said it yourself. In 2, 3, 4 years, this project will take us 2, 3 years to get there. So we're there now. It's not a matter of waiting till 3, 4 years out and then deciding, and then we're a couple years out again. So, right, so it's, for me, that's where we're at.
If I may add, what I'm saying is it will take 2, 3, 4 years to find more of those companies. Right now, every one of the businesses is land intensive. None of them is really high technology. New build is getting there. Some of the others are getting there. But anybody who needs more than 10 acres of land is not going to be high employment business. It's going to be land intensive business.
Right. But it's hard to sell something to somebody when you don't have it available to sell,
Yes, agreed. Of course.
right? So I'm looking at it, if we don't service the area, we're limiting ourselves. This is as far as we're going to go. If we bring services, we are unlimited to where the potential goes. Councillor Deakin, and then Mr. Fondon.
I just wanted to say that we are also at a point right now where we have several businesses looking for unserviced land now. So that is also a reality of today. And in the other map, Louis, if you would be so kind, there's a lot of green arrows there, future expansion of the industrial park. And I think that the blue is there very intentionally with those 3 arrows pointing south. I'm really interested in hearing anything that the administration has to say about those arrows, and if the blue spaces were chosen as such due to future possible serviced expansion in that direction, as perhaps, sorry, I only remember your first name, Barry, mentioned would be something that the township could be looking at getting into more and more of in the coming 5, 10 years in terms of breaking ground. So I'm looking at the best of all of these options, and I just want to hear about what that future potential looks like.
Mr. Fondon?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Deakin. Just a comment, so we had met a couple of weeks ago, and on the issue of timing, we discussed what 3 to 5 years means, and my comment was 5 years is next week in terms of planning from my perspective. So we are thinking ahead, and we are thinking about that near strategic future when we talk about the thing. Hence why the option 3 initially recommended having an element of unserviced land remaining to be able to sell to companies in current demand, and then getting ready for the next bound. The issue of the green arrows, that was basically just a very, very, very quick, rough illustration of the concept that over the next series of probably decades, we can foresee that this area will continue to develop, and it will likely develop west, east, and south, more likely south. All of that would, of course, require further infrastructure investments, negotiations with the water provider in Ottawa, et cetera, but we're now talking about 20 years hence. So even for me, that's too strategic.
Conseiller Lorrain?
Yeah, that was going to be my question. Essentially was the 150, the 41, and the 260, so that's 417 acres of land. How long of a build-out time frame are we talking before we talk about the green arrows? Right? Like, is that a 20, 30, 40-year expansion? Right?
So,
Like,
Thank you, Mr.
that's just what I'm trying to
I'll
understand.
defer the question, if I may, Mr. Mayor, to
Madame Tremblay?
Tremblay, but I don't want to have Madame Tremblay run screaming from the room. We put a lot of pressure on our economic development team, small and earnest as it is, to develop this land. We're trying to sort of fix our next decade's worth of challenge. Those green arrows, and I'll take the hit on that, I asked for those to kind of provide a very broad illustration of strategic development. We could have easily left the green arrows out and be totally happy, because this, and I'll defer to Dominic to answer in more detail, but this requires a lot more official planning and consultation with upper tier.
Well, that was my concern, right? We're talking about 700 acres. If you take out the 331 from the 1,022, that's a ton of land for expansion. Like, we're talking, like, 331 acres has taken us what? That land, the 120 acres of the original park was done before I got on council. The other 210 acres has been over the last 17 years. So if I just do the quick math of 220 acres, we got 400 and something acres there. You're still talking a lot of expansion time frame.
And based on Madame Tremblay's report, the next 225 will be sold as soon as the OP is approved. So we're going to be knocking at the county's door sooner rather than later. So now right now it's a snowball going down a hill, and it's just speeding up and growing. So, Madame Tremblay?
I'm going to answer the question in three different parts, I would say. So this map was basically used because we need to design the services, so we had to start somewhere. So basically, financially, the Hempson report was showing where the next 40 years would go. So basically, that's the next 40 years in our planning for design and for servicing and financially. The arrow was kind of to show logically, if we were to expand the services, expand the industrial park, where we would be looking at. So as you know, there's a full planning process of justifying where we would expand, and that's basically the discussion that we had in the future. For the other part of the answer to your question is how long is it going to take? It depends on, or is it going to be service or not service? Because if we expect that it's not service, we're going to sell bigger piece of property to fewer businesses. When it's going to be service, I'm going to try to focus on selling smaller properties, so it means a lot more property that we need to find to fill those properties. So the answer is kind of unknown. I could tell you that right now we sold over 60 acre. I know that it shows that the 331 and the first part was built before I was here also, but since 2014, the last piece of property that we purchased 2 years ago is sold, so it was about 80 acre that we sold in 2 years. So we're selling a lot faster than we used to. There's a lot more interest that we used to not have in the past. As Barry mentioned as well, having a more active program of selling and finding businesses is something that we could also entertain, and I think it's a great idea. But as I mentioned, it all depends if it's service or not to define the time that it's going to take for us to sell.
Follow-up, Conseiller Lorrain, and then Conseiller Lalonde.
Yeah. My last question for right now is, apologies if we can go to the other slide again. Good thing you did that, yeah. Have we gained commitment from the people that own the land in the gold and the 3 stars on the right-hand side that would then pay up front for the servicing of those lands?
So I'll just to confirm, the gold parcels are the ones that are trade and industry in the OP as it is right now, right?
Correct, yeah.
So, and
Privately owned.
privately owned. The stars on the left are not trade and industry currently in the OP.
I'm not talking about the stars on the left, talking about the stars on the right.
Yeah, those 2 areas are not trade and industry right now.
Okay, however, they are part of the 417 acres that are being proposed. So is that 28 million the cost of us carrying the cost on all of that 417? Because I thought it was only on the lands that we owned.
Mr. Fawn and Monsieur Godin?
Merci, Monsieur Mayor. So if I understood the question correctly, so the 28 million is for service, to bring in services for that whole region. So as much the gold as the purple as those two sections with the stars. What option 3 is saying is we need to go to, like, we need to figure out how to secure that funding. So there hasn't been any commitments from those property owners as of now, right? So what we're looking for direction to move forward with option 3 is to get that commitment, or to start having conversations and start having more serious analyses and building up that scenario where we can obtain that.
So I'll add a wrench to this. So what happens, for example, if we get those 3 parcels, those 3 stars in option 3 that say, yes, we're willing to move forward and pay for the servicing? Where do we get that designation from? Do we take it away from our 119 and 48 acres ourselves that we own in order to make that happen? That's a potential, right? Because we'd have to, we'll have people who are willing to pay. So I'm just throwing that out there. That might happen.
If there's people, through Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, if there's people that will put the money up front, our doors are open.
Right.
There's nobody that came yet. So as soon as they come and they show the money, then we'll be talking.
Right. I'm just saying in option 3, we're planning on selling all that land unserviced, but we might have to give up our own designation to those areas who are willing to pay up front for servicing. I'm saying that's a possibility. So again, we would end up in a situation where we're just going to be doing service land. We won't have land to sell anymore. That's what I'm saying. There's that risk possibility there.
Didn't we get additional land designation though, as part of the United
Yeah,
Counties?
this is all included.
That's all included?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought there was an additional.
The 250 is including in
250s.
our maps.
Okay, so is that the additional gold areas that includes the 250?
I believe the 250 was the 100 at the bottom, the 50.
It's all the land that we've just purchased, so the 119, 48, 50, and 100.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
And the 100 in the gold there? Is that the one?
Yep.
Okay.
Conseiller Lalonde?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, first of all, I want to thank staff. I got a chance to sit down a few days back and get a dress rehearsal on this. So I have a few less questions because I had the great privilege of running through some of this stuff with them, and I'm grateful for that. I know we're not there yet, but I'm certainly a proponent of option 3 because I can't see how we can come in with the 331 acres and start imposing services on people who didn't want them, don't want them, and are never going to need them, among other things. But certainly there's no question, we have a need, for some versatility out there. And we have a need to offer more than just a Big Mac. We have to be able to offer a quarter pounder. And, businesses are looking for that. We can't just be a one-hit wonder out at that park. It doesn't make sense going forward. I'm just wondering, so being an option 3 fan, as to whether we go on this slide with coming down from the left side with 119 acres all the way to the bottom, and including those 2 stars for the 50 and the 15, and the economic or the financial impact of doing it that way because of lands owned or not loaned, versus, I guess, the one that was presented in the other slide that has us coming all down the south side, and the economic benefit or not of doing that. There's also the infrastructure cost of doing that, and I'm wondering if there could be some modeling done that we get to see either option, either coming down from the left and making a right turn, or just sticking with that. But I guess what I'm trying to get to is, what does Jonathan Bourgon say about what is the more efficient way of delivering services or picking up the water and delivering sewer? In either of those designs, is there not one that would be more efficient and effective than the other? So that's, I'll land on that question, and it would be for Jonathan Bourgon.
Monsieur Bourgon, the engineer, the consultant will give us that answer.
Yeah, so basically, we didn't do any design at this time for option 3, but obviously what we propose, we would use our Route 100 likely to bring services for that stretch and to go to the eastern portion of the proposed service land to give us the ability future to develop towards the south.
Follow up?
So just to follow, so do you see that as being the more efficient approach, generally speaking, infrastructure investment-wise?
Yes, and that's why the options 3 has proposed is in front of council tonight.
So we could continue going back and forth on a million possibilities. I think we have an option in front of us. I think for me, it's do we want to bring service to the area? For me, it's yes, we need to bring services to the area. And I think that I'm okay with excluding Ottawa. At this time, I'm okay excluding the existing portion as it described in option 3. We will have an opportunity to hear the business owners from themselves, so I don't anticipate that 95% of the people are going to come up here and say, yes, we want services and we're willing to pay. I'll be surprised, but you never know. So I guess before we move on to questions of the public, is everybody comfortable excluding Ottawa? I think that's the first thing. I see heads nodding. We're okay excluding Ottawa. Are we okay excluding the existing built-up area, unless obviously we get a majority of people that say they want it, but if we don't get that majority, are we okay excluding that area? I see heads nodding. So far we're good. So it's looking like option 3. So is there any more questions from members of council before we move on to the public questions? So I'll open it up to the next item, which is the période de questions. So I'll ask, it's in regards to questions about the discussion. So if you have questions, please state your name and address for the record. If it's just to voice your opinion, normally that's not the case. So I'll just ask you to say, if you're part of the existing owners, say, I'm part of the existing owners, yes, I want services, or no, I don't want services. Because we could be here till 3 o'clock in the morning debating this, and I want to try and keep it on a timely fashion. I definitely want to hear from everybody. So, if you do have a question, for sure, ask your question. We'll try and address that. But if it's just to voice your opinion, you're welcome to do that, but please do so in a fashion that we get straight to the point. So I'll ask. Yeah, Councillor Lorrain?
Just from a procedural perspective, do we have to, alter the rules of procedure to allow for
Comments?
comment, not just question?
Sure, let's
I
do
just
it.
want to make sure we're doing things correctly.
Yeah, so suspend the rules of the procedure to allow comments. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Lorrain, seconded by Councillor Lalonde. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. So we suspended the rules for that aspect of the thing.
Okay, Charles Armstrong, 85 Castable. First, I'm trying to follow up on Councillor Lawrence's questions because I have some confusion in my mind. So just hold on for a second. This area in green from here over. Do I understand that those properties were purchased with a requirement to connect if services were available?
Yes, in the contract, I believe since 2015-16, it's been in the contracts that if they were agreeing to pay their share if we brought services.
So option 3 is proposing to relieve those landowners of that obligation. Is that correct?
So those lands we're not bringing services to those lands, so therefore they would not have to connect and pay their share because we're not bringing services.
But if that financing was already there, that was part of, or
If-
they understood that,
It wasn't.
why would we relieve them? I'm not under.
We're
I
not,
don't
we're not
understand.
relieving, council would simply make the decision that we are not servicing the area.
Mr. Mayor,
Okay.
can I add something?
Conseiller Lorrain?
I believe it's in the contract that if services were to be brought to that area, they would be required to connect. However, if we're not bringing services to that area, then they do not have an obligation to connect. It's not like we're bringing the services and we're saying, no, you don't have to connect. We're not bringing the services, therefore, we're not relieving them of any obligation. If somebody were to bring services, they would still have that in their contract and they would still have to connect down the road, if that was the case. I believe that answers the question.
That's correct, Madame Tremblay.
And my next question is, Mr. Mayor, you brought it up about bonuses. With the valuation that was in the report, does the price of unserviced and serviced land go to 100,000 an acre and 150 an acre based on that on future purchases?
So that is the consultants, or the evaluation that was provided in the report. However, council has not agreed to that pricing at this point in time, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
we have to come back to council with a full financial analysis to see. That was a suggested price, but we have other component to consider when this report will be presented.
Right. And just to be fair, from a former business owner, supply and demand. So if the demand is through the roof for something in the future, who knows? I would expect that the prices would increase. As our consultant indicated, there's lands out there. So it's just because township owns the land, it doesn't mean it's 100, 150, and that's it, that's all. We adjust our market like we've done in the past. We've gone through that steps where we've adjusted pricing as we went along.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening. John Van Lane, Thermal King, 130 Enterprise, in the existing 31 acres, or 331 acres, sorry. One question I have. From 2015 to 2018, what was the price per acre in the newer development of the original?
Price per acre to purchase land?
Yes.
So Madame Tremblay, what was,
So it's, through Mr. Mayor, it started at 9,500 per acre back then.
originally?
Originally, then it went up to $25,000 an acre, and the last phase was $45,000 an acre.
Right, and the last contract that I signed was at?
$45,000 an acre.
Okay. Thought it was higher than that, but.
Was the price not based on being obligated to connect to the water?
Madame Tremblay, as indicated, it wasn't an obligation. If we brought servicing, then they were obligated to connect.
Yeah, so basically, the agreement was saying exactly what Monsieur Lorrain mentioned. So if services were to be in front of their property, they had the obligation to connect, but there was no cost associated with that connection or agreement of connecting.
Right.
So that was always, when we had pre-consultation with any business owner in the park, they knew that we were talking about having services and that they would have to pay their own share of the local improvement of services.
If we brought the
So
service.
in the purchase agreement contract, there was no cost associated with the obligation.
Okay.
But in 2018, $25,000 an acre was incredibly cheap.
Correct. That's why we went up to 45,000, because it was cheap.
And now that they're not obligated to connect or participate in getting the water into that original, because we have 5 acres. We have 8,600 square foot of building. We have a team of under 20 people, and we want the water. And we're not high-tech. We don't need the water, but we do want it.
Right.
It would be nice to wash our hands and not have the smell, just to start with.
Right.
And we've invested incredibly on 3 different systems. None of them work. Okay. Option 2 was not discussed. Why?
Good question, Mr. Fonin, Monsieur Godin, Madame Tremblay. Essentially, my understanding is from a infrastructure point, if you're going to bring water, then you might as well bring sewer. I mean, why, you're already doing the job. That's like saying, we're going to build a subdivision and just bring one service. I'm not sure it makes sense, but Madame Tremblay?
It is true, but at the same time, it was not discussed. However, it was in the report for council to have the discussion. We were trying to keep the presentation as short as possible so that we could keep people's attention, but we are open for questions on that option, and it was fully evaluated as part of the report to council.
Yeah. Can we just, from a financial standpoint, Monsieur Godin, I believe it was in the report, dans cette présentation-là was further, and it showed the financial impact, correct? Option 2 was there. So let's...
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. So it's on the screen now. The cost was $20 million an acre for option 2. And it generated a net benefit over 40 years of $14 million.
So it's considerably less as opposed to the 40 million.
Exactly, that's correct.
So I have to agree that to bring water without sewers for new developments would not be logical. But could it not be considered to bring water to the existing that already have their septics and have already invested into their buildings, yet have water? So that would be better services for us. At a lower cost, that should alleviate a lot of the opposition of the cost of bringing both waters and sewers. It could be a win-win.
So what you're suggesting is basically bringing bringing water to the existing and then bringing services to everything else.
It brings you a bigger pool of money to play with, to finance the project.
Yeah.
And it also, I believe, would be a win-win for both the future and the present.
Yeah. I think, unfortunately, bring up the map again, Louis, of the existing 331 acres times 20, you're looking at 6.5 million. I'm not sure 6.5 million will alleviate the pressures of the cash flow problem. Up front on now, we'd be closer to a $40-45 million project because we'll have to increase, right? If 333 acres, there will be a significant, we're basically adding, I'm not sure the exact amount, we'd have to do some financial calculations, but there would have to be more financial analysis, but I appreciate the comment, thank you.
My name is Tim Parsons. I'm an owner of 417 Mini Storage. We're in the existing older section. So to keep it very short, we are opposed to including the pre-existing businesses in the plan, so we would support, or option 3 is obviously the one that we would support. Just to add, I mean, it would be a financial burden on my company to pay the $47,000 an acre, which is the pro cost, because we have no need for water. We don't have an office. We don't have any water. Nobody's there.
Right.
No sewer. So for our business, it makes no sense.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We'll walk you over a mic next time.
Yeah, perfect. Dean Drevniak, 560 Echo. We're a local contractor, and so we have lots of clients that are building in the park. And, obviously, it makes no difference to me whether you bring sewer and water to existing buildings, I get it. But it does make a lot of sense to bring water to the existing park. If you're talking that the water is 20 million for all 1,000 acres, if you do that, that's $20,000 an acre. 6.5 million, that is awfully cheap if it's just for the existing park. It's like $7,000 an acre for somebody to have water. Most of us have designed the systems. Septic is not our issue. It's life safety when it comes to sprinklers, firefighting capacity, and this is where the township has liability, and as a taxpayer living in this township, I think you guys are making a mistake in terms of burdening us with additional liability by not having proper life safety in that park. I'd also like to know if we have a legal opinion regarding the agreements that we signed as owners, because it was implied that sewer and water was being brought to us when we developed our future developments. So I'd like to know if the townships protected us as taxpayers to make sure that we don't have liability there. And to, 417 storage, I understand 100% why he doesn't want it, but I don't know why you can't formulate a quick survey, who will make the connection, factor it in, and away we go. But actually put a number in front of it. The biggest problem you've always done is you never tell us what the number is. If you want to say it's $10,000 an acre to bring water only to you, and put that in front of a business person, they can make an informed decision. You've never done that.
I think we've been clear from the beginning, it was 47,000 an acre for both services, from the get-go.
No. But anyways.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name's Rhonda Bradley, and I am an owner, but not a business owner. I'm actually a property owner that borders this industrial park. So I do have some questions about where the water is coming from and what impact that will have on owners who are not businesses.
Okay, so let's start one question at a time. So, Mr. Fon and Monsieur Bourgon, I believe it's coming through, connecting to ED Road.
Yeah, exactly. So there's already a valve that was installed at the beginning of the water main, so we're be coming off 80 Road.
Okay.
But is the water capacity sufficient to service an expanded business park and current property owners?
Monsieur Fon and Monsieur Bourgon, I think that's what we were discussing. There will have to be negotiations with the City of Ottawa, but capacity will have to be discussed with the City of Ottawa regardless in the future.
Exactly.
So I guess I would say that I certainly understand the benefits of option 3, but it sounds like there's a lot of details that have yet to be resolved that would have significant impact on owners, whether they're residential or business, and like easement negotiations, like the market testing about who would pay for what. There is no consensus at present. So I guess I'm wondering if there are still a number of things outstanding. Why is this decision being pushed through without the benefit of the full information?
I'll try and address that one. If not, Mr. Fon, jump in. In regards to, council has to make a decision whether we want to move forward in principle or not. If we continuously wait till we have every single detail, that can take a while. And this is something we've been working on for quite a while. And I agree, I wish we had all the answers today, and, but like I said at the beginning, how you eat an elephant, it was one bite at a time. We've taken a lot of bites out of the elephant. This is just the next stage, is to move things forward.
I'd say this particular elephant is a bit half-cooked.
Mr. Fonin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As with all major projects, you start with an intention. Once the intention is provided as direction, then the difficult work begins in terms of analysis of all the different administrative, logistical, operational, financial concerns. Along the way, as with everything else on every other project that this township runs through, consultation and information sessions will occur with residents, clients, business people, other stakeholders, City of Ottawa. There's much discussion to be had, but without the intention, we're simply talking in circles at that point, which we've been doing for about 10 years. So we're asking for a commitment with regard to that intention so that we can start to take on the hard work and continue those consultations.
I think part of the discussion as well is that we currently have people on the waiting list to buy land, and they want to know, are they investing in private services or will they be investing in public services?
Understood. You talked about in option 3 the need to do easement negotiations, and not really clear about how that might turn out. Who will those negotiations be with? And how many negotiations need to happen?
So, Mr. Fon and Monsieur Bourgon?
It will be with the property owners.
Residential or business?
There's some of both, I believe. Mostly residential?
Well, residential or farming. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going through our unopened road allowance to get to our Russell Lagoon.
So how many is that?
Do we know how many property owners roughly?
I think it's like with four.
4 property owners?
Yeah, because some of them own several pieces of property.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My English is very bad.
Ah, tu peux parler en français si tu veux, il n'y a pas de trouble du tout.
I can speak in English, but it's very bad. First of all, do you make a survey for the property of the 331 acres?
Excuse me.
Yes. Oh, juste ton nom puis ton adresse.
Ah,
s'il vous plaît.
mon nom, c'est Serge Miro.
Oui.
L'adresse, c'est 232 Robot.
OK, parfait.
On a acheté 5 acres, on est en train de construire 30,000 square feet building.
Parfait. Bienvenue.
Thank you.
So
Make a
just,
survey for existing peoples if you want water and sewer.
so we had done a survey in the past, Mr. Fon and Madame Tremblay, once or twice, if I remember well, several times.
Oui, on a fait plusieurs surveys, plusieurs questions, plusieurs emails. Malheureusement, les gens participent pas au sondage, puis les gens répondent pas au courriel. Donc, les tentatives, c'est pas ce qui a manqué d'essayer de rejoindre nos propriétaires existants, nos nouveaux propriétaires et les gens qui sont sur notre liste d'attente. Il y a eu un survey 2 ans passés, il y a un survey l'année passée, justement pour savoir si les gens voulaient l'eau, voulaient les égouts, savoir quel prix par heure qu'ils étaient prêts à payer. Donc, oui, ça a été fait à maintes reprises.
Bon, désolé, mais moi, comme je vous dis, je suis nouveau, fait que
Oui.
j'ai pas pu participer au survey. Mais moi, je pense, I'm thinking that if you reduce the cost, increase the value of the property, and it's good explained, I think it's probably people's accept to put the water and sewer in the bill. I don't know, you told me that you make the survey. But secondly, my second question, I'm located here. This land here.
Okay.
Why you don't, a lot of land there was not built yet.
Right.
Why you cut the 48 acres and 119 acres like that?
So I'll pass it to Madame Tremblay in a second, but I just want to confirm. So you are not built yet?
Yeah, I'm starting to build, but doesn't matter. If you, I put the water, I put the sewer, but as far as I'm concerned, if we put the services
You want to
for the
connect?
city, I'm gonna buy it.
Okay. So, Madame Tremblay, I'm not sure why we cut out a section. I think it was just because it's existing. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it was considered existing because they're all sold under process of construction. So that's how on a délimité les terrains.
Okay. But in your case, even though you've put in the infrastructure for your building,
I'm sure that everybody is not starting the building yet, gonna happen forget it, I'm sure.
yep. I tend to agree.
Put the survey at these people's. It's not built yet.
Parfait. Merci beaucoup. Madame Tremblay?
Je voudrais juste préciser que c'est pas le cas. Donc, on a eu des réponses de survey des gens qui sont en construction, qui viennent juste de terminer dans cette nouvelle phase-là, qui ne veulent pas les services.
OK. Parfait.
Bonjour, Thomas Noël, je représente la famille Béchard, c'est 104 rue Clément. Nous autres, on existe dans l'ancien, we're in the old park, the 331 acres. We would be very interested in having the water and sewers. The septic tanks, I know there's some new laws that are going to come forward from the provincial government. I was at Queen's Park the day after you guys were there, that they are looking at. It's not implemented yet, but you're going to see some changes for septic tanks, which is going to make it more difficult for existing owners. We are interested in purchasing new land. If it's water and sewer that is provided, we will gladly buy that property. Also, sprinklers. About 2.5 years ago, it wasn't necessary, and now it is necessary for us. So we have to look at our existing building to put sprinklers in. I'm not sure with the water option if that has enough pressure just to have the sprinkler system without having all the diesel backup systems or not. So that's something I'd like to know if that's an option. But definitely, the property owners moving forward are going to find it more and more difficult to have insurance, even for storage. You might see some people asking for sprinklers as they move forward. So I'm just letting you know things are changing faster than.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think it's fair to say that those, obviously the storage, you don't have water or sewer on your site, but those that have private services, water and sewer, you might not need to change it today, you might not need to change it in 10 years, but at some point in time, you might have to change it, and there will be a cost. And if it's anything like residential areas, they didn't want to connect years ago, and now when the time is, when it's time to replace their systems, they're knocking at our door saying, can we have services? Yeah, unfortunately, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work, so.
Yeah, just to give an idea to other property owners, we have also other businesses in Montreal and also Scarborough and Hamilton and Mississauga and Barrie. There are some places now where if you don't have the sprinklers, you cannot get insurance, period. So it's become very problematic if you don't have access to water, well, high-pressured water, not just low-pressure water. So, thank you.
Okay. Perfect. Something to keep in mind. Other questions, comments?
Robert Bourdeau, 136 Clément. I got to really watch here what I say and how I express myself. I wear many hats, as many of you know. I love putting pipes in the ground. This is what I do for a living. So bear with me here, but I'll try to be as cautious as possible. I'll ask two questions to Jonathan Bourgon. The first question, you said the lagoon, I don't know you, Mr. CAO, I don't know you yet, but you said the lagoons should be out of the question. I think the lagoons have to be big part of the question. Do you see a standard lagoon for an expansion this size, Monsieur Bourgon?
Mr. Fawn and Monsieur Bourgon.
So the lagoon will need to be expanded.
Will it do as a lagoon, or do you see a mechanical plant?
Well, for us, the township, we're actually looking at it right now, and it will likely be an upgrade being mechanical.
Yes.
Mechanical plant, just so you know, and so members of council know, City of Almonte did their mechanical plant about 15 years ago, $26 million.
Yep.
So that is a cost that you don't have on your sheets right now.
Yep.
Okay.
And
Sorry, I don't cut off nobody. Please don't cut me off. I'd like to finish first, if that's okay.
Vas-y,
Thank you,
Monsieur Bourdeau.
Matt. Number two is, I have the second question to Monsieur Bourgon.
So, Monsieur Bourdeau, les questions viennent à moi, puis moi j'ai mais.
Okay, the second question is, are you aware that the Castal River cannot take hardly any more sewer effluent?
Mr. Fawn and Monsieur Bourgon.
At this time, with all the discussion we have with the ministry, we would still be able to expand. Just like I mentioned, it would likely be mechanical in order to meet all our requirements.
And I believe there's potential opportunity with neighboring municipalities in regards to potentially combining for a mechanical plant.
That would be hard because of the distance. We're so much apart. It will be hard. But at this time, it's more of meeting the requirement from the province than the capacity of the river.
Merci.
So is it fair to say that there's a big question mark for anybody investing in a project that size with what you have in the township? Do you come halfway in it with a mechanical plant, not being able to service the whole thing? Be very, very cautious. I'm telling council, be very, very cautious. This is a very slippery slope.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Bourdeau.
Salut, la famille Gauthier, ID Road. On est des résidents, puis je regarde le potentiel d'acheter des terrains dans le 119 A qu'on vient juste d'apprendre cette semaine, qui ont été achetés par le conseil. On n'avait aucune idée. On avait un somewhat of a mutual agreement avec l'ancien propriétaire qu'on aurait l'opportunité, avant qu'il vende, de pouvoir acheter une parcelle pour avoir un buffer. Maintenant, ça a tout été changé parce que le conseil a acheté le terrain puis il y avait le potentiel d'acheter tout au complet. Nous, en tant que résidents, on a eu 0 consultation. Vous êtes pas mal conscients des discussions qu'on a eues, Monsieur le maire, avec plusieurs personnes. Il n'y a aucun planning qui se fait. De notre côté, on essaie d'avoir des choses, de l'infrastructure qui est maintenue. Il y a 0 planning. Fait que, basé sur ce que j'ai vu, il n'y a pas de frais de lagune qui a été analysé là-dedans, comme M. Bourdeau a dit. Nous, c'est un gros, excusez, c'est un gros problème pour nous, avoir tout ce terrain-là ici. Puis nous, en tant que résidents, on n'est pas protégés. Il n'y a aucune analyse qui a été faite en tant que résident. Si on a de la contamination dans nos puits, on est toujours laissé. J'ai demandé la dernière fois à la demoiselle qui s'occupe du développement économique. Puis on s'est plus ou moins fait dire qu'il faudrait juste vendre. Je ne suis pas sûr qu'en tant que résident, c'est l'option qui est la meilleure. On s'est fait plus ou moins dire qu'il bâtirait jusqu'à la ligne de propriété, qu'il n'y aurait pas de buffer. Les discussions qu'on a eues avec plusieurs membres qui sont ici.
Sur la question, M. Gauthier?
Sur la question est-ce qu'il va y avoir un plan qui va être partagé aux résidents qui sont concernés?
Un plan dans quel sens?
Overall, sur tout le projet, parce qu'il semble qu'il y a beaucoup de choses qui sont plus ou moins... il y a trop d'unknown, vraiment. Puis en tant que résident, comme M. Bourdeau il disait, il y a plein de choses qui n'ont pas été analysées. Puis,
pour clarification, comme notre DG a dit, it's about the intention at this point in time. So, and then, once the intention of council has been decided, là, toute l'analyse, tout ça va commencer. Is that correct, Monsieur DG?
Merci, M. le maire. Oui, absolument. Après les rédactions ce soir, c'est l'intention de commencer la planification, s'y inclut les consultations avec les membres du public, les résidents, les entrepreneurs.
Okay.
Parfait. Ça va inclure des discussions avec tous les shareholders. Puis ça va être une discussion qui va être ouverte des deux côtés parce qu'avoir des réponses, c'est très difficile. On a essayé d'avoir des réponses sur plusieurs infrastructures locales, puis c'est très difficile d'avoir une réponse qui est claire.
Oui, M. Fonin, ça va faire partie des étapes.
Absolument, monsieur. Merci.
Parfait. Merci beaucoup.
Merci. Councilor Lorrain?
Peux-tu juste rester là pour un second parce que I just have a question for you. Are you talking more about the development of that land and what's going to go on it when we talk about the 119 acres? Because I'm assuming you're to the left of that on Edie Road or in that side?
Correct. So I am the property owner right beside the pump
Right.
lot.
Okay.
So I'm the first property there, but I'm also looking to buy a parcel in behind to build a shop so that I can create a buffer as well.
Okay. So what I'm really want to make sure of is, so you're asking about what is going to be developed on that land and wanting to be involved in understanding the development of the land and who's going to buy and what kind of businesses are going to go on that land. Is that?
So we want to be consulted, basically, is what we're asking for.
Right.
We've been asking a lot of questions on infrastructure that has been going in around this business park, and it's very clear that there is no planning on any infrastructure related to this project. This doesn't concern this specific plan, but if we are going to put a business park this close to our house, I think water would be essential in case something happens to our wells.
Right. So in your case, then, you would like to see the park being serviced?
Depending on, yes, that would be a certain security for us as homeowners. But then if we have to bear the cost, I'm not sure that would make it worthwhile, right? So we had to be part of the planning at some point.
Yeah. So, Madame Tremblay, if we were going ahead with servicing the park, the property owners, residential property owners abutting the park would be notified as part of public consultations?
There's no actual requirement to have a public meeting, but if council wants us to consult, there's no issue. I think they were consulted as part of the EA. I don't know if Mr. Bourgon, the EA process, when the design of the services are done, there's a requirement under the law that we need to involve the public. So there was EA.
Notifications.
I don't know if Mr. Bourcon wants to mention, and as well, when we did the OP, there's publication as well, that it's all a process that is open to the public. The sale and the purchase of lands is done publicly as well, so we don't knock at people's door, or we don't invite in public notices, because there's no zoning amendment at this point that we're required, or no plan of subdivision, so there's no regulation under the Planning Act to circulate to the property owner at this point.
So through you, Mr. Fawnin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a general comment. I think in a project of this type, it's imperative that the municipality and the municipal administration be as transparent as absolutely possible. Transparency doesn't necessarily mean acquiescence to every preference of every resident, every business owner, but it certainly means that information goes out as much as possible. Public consultation, the sense of information sessions. As Madame Tremblay indicated, we wouldn't necessarily be knocking on each individual door and having individual meetings with every person, but certainly there'll be opportunities to come in, to pay attention on the website for upcoming events, pushing out information. That'll be going right as soon as the planning starts.
Yeah, and I would suggest that you sign up to our municipal newsletter, because that's a form of communication that we actively use.
So just to follow up on the question, we're a few neighbors here, including myself. All three of us who are heavily involved in the development of the land, and none of us knew any specifics to it other than the newspaper articles that have gone out. So I'm tech savvy, so is my previous neighbor Rhonda, and Tom and Sharon have access to email. None of us had notification on major parts of this. So what I'm saying is our tactics have to change on how we publicize it, because people are not seeing it, A, people are not having the option to voice their opinions, and C, obviously we can't keep doing the same thing.
Right. So, Mr. Fawnin, did you want to comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just the comment is that this is it. Tonight is the night. This is the first night of a long journey. There hasn't been any planning conducted with specific regard to the operational go-forward plan. This night begins a long journey which will take months, if not years, to complete. That will be as transparent as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Correct. So I would like a commitment from council that people will be informed in an efficient manner so that we can have access to information moving forward. She just said that she
Yeah,
does
so
not have the-
I just want to be clear. Communication is a two-way street, right? We put out a ton of information. Now, whether residents take the time to look for that information, but it is a communication. So from my perspective, as our CEO has stated, the information will be shared publicly. I'm suggesting that you sign up to our newsletter. That information, whenever we have a public meeting, that is sent out. That is part of the emails. Now, a lot of people get an email and, garbage it. I can't control that. But I can say, as this council with the administration is engaged to make this as transparent as possible, and we will be providing information to residents, and you will have the opportunity to discuss things moving forward.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
It's Rhonda Bradley again, and I just wanted to respond to what you had said, that tonight's the first night in this decision. However, a pretty significant piece of this planning has begun with the upper tier of government and the change in designation of lands. And that process, I spent most of today going through the website of the township. There's probably one place that I can easily locate that the change in that plan, and I have to dig for it. And I certainly wouldn't have had any sense of the significance of an upper tier government decision and how it would impact on my property. I don't think that's a reasonable
So,
expectation.
as a homeowner, you do have a responsibility
I absolutely
to pay
agree.
attention.
And I have been.
Right, and Prescott Russell is the upper tier. That's another level of government that we have to pay attention to.
But I would expect that the township was also communicating that.
So it's two different levels here.
Yes, no, I
Right?
I do
So
understand that.
the upper tier shared
So
information.
you have no relationship with the upper tier of government?
So in regards to the upper tier government, there is a connection, but they have their own communication plan. They share the information base for their official plan. Madame Tremblay, correct me if I'm wrong, we provided from a township perspective information on the official plan, and residents had the opportunity to do so as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the public notice was sent by the county because it's their official plan. And they follow what's required in the Planning Act, and we did have those discussion, I think 2 or 3 times at council as well. The report was also available to the public when we had those discussion for land inclusion in the 417 Industrial Park as well as for the residential. So it was a full report that was prepared by a consultant that was shared on our Facebook and as well from the agenda as part of council.
Right.
I guess what I'm trying to say, the point I'm trying to make is that from a trust building and an engagement point of view, I don't feel that the township where I live has done everything they could do to inform me of the significance of that change.
So I'm happy to have a discussion anytime with you to see how we can improve that. But keep in mind, we also have 20,000 residents in the township.
I totally understand that. I'm
Right.
not asking for any special dispensation, but I do feel that it wasn't as clear and transparent as it could be.
Thank you. Other questions?
Hello, I'm Sharon Gunsel, and we're at 136 Edie Road. When do you expect the official plan to be passed?
The official plan of the,
DOT.
at the United Counties level? Right now, it's in the hands of the minister's office, and they're in the midst of redoing the provincial policy statement, so your guess is as good as mine. I would rather see it sooner than later. Unfortunately, it's up in the air right now.
A rough estimate?
I can't even give you a rough estimate. It's the ministers, they've had it since the fall of last year, and we're still waiting.
Okay, and about a week ago, red stakes went in all around their properties and out to Edie Road from the industrial park. And so it sounds like a road is already being devised right out, be like 3 doors from our place.
So, Mr. Fawn and Monsieur Bourgon, do you know I don't know what the red stakes are, so I couldn't tell you.
Oh, there's a whole field full.
Yeah, well, we're still planning construction of the road regardless the option that council takes tonight. There will be a road in the future, so surveyors, topo, like prep work in that sense.
Right. Okay.
And also, if I can just touch base on, Mme. Tremblay mentioned for the EA process. So there's 3 notices that were sent out for different phase of our EA to neighboring owners. So that did happen. Like we did one when we started the process of the EA, one when we include Ottawa, and one when we did the amendment because we awarded the contract and there's pieces of land that we had to modify. So just from the EA point of view, there was 3 notices or three times that we advised, plus an open house that was organized as well. Just.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. So it's a road.
Yes, and I think there's been no traffic study or anything done. And now if it's going to go into the industrial park, it's an extension of Emard Street. There's going to be truck traffic coming out on Edie Road. Is that the understanding? We'll not have high traffic area? It's not designated like Burton is for heavy trucks.
Monsieur Bourgon?
Yes, so there will be traffic coming out. To say the amount, there's 2 ways as well to come in the park.
But there's been no traffic study or anything
Is a traffic study required, Monsieur Bourgon?
Well, we did one for the overall of the park back in, that was with our last master plan back in 2016, I believe. But that would be need confirmed, I'm going out in memory here.
Okay, so you'll be able to do a follow-up for administration on that one. Okay.
Because my understanding is that like North Russell Road or Burton Road, those are like secondary highways. And Edie Road is not like that. And there's already a lot of traffic, there's about 500 new houses down the road, and there's a rush hour morning and night, as it
Yeah.
is.
I believe every
so-
road is evaluated, whether it's a main collector or a minor collector, that kind of stuff. But Mr. Bourgon will be able to verify that stretch of road.
Yeah, but if there's going to be heavy truck traffic coming in and out, that's a very different situation.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
C'est Thomas Noël, 104 rue Clément, à Verdun, Porte des Fenêtres. Je voulais juste savoir pour les 100 acres, if the council goes ahead with option 3, for example, how long will it take before the water and sewers? Is it going to be 3 years, 5 years, 20 years? Because I'm just hearing, in the beginning I was hearing 2 years, and now I'm hearing more and more years. So I just want to have an idea, because then it factors in how when we want to build our manufacturing plants. So we just want to know how long.
That's a fantastic question. And I think the reality is, once council gives the direction that we're moving forward, it's a few years, but based on the report, we have to have agreements in place with everyone to essentially pay for it. So if we can't get those agreements, we're not looking at servicing this land, based on what's being recommended at this point in time. Mr. Fawnin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So there's a tremendous amount of concurrent activity in the planning process, and starting tomorrow morning if there's direction provided. In terms of the findings inside, there's a separate line of effort that would have to be put into place in regard to the financings. But concurrent to that, planning can begin at least to ensure traffic studies and working with business owners, working with the City of Ottawa for capacity. So I would say that right now the current estimate is between let's say 2.5. Correct me, Mr. Bourgon, if I'm totally out of here, but 2 to 3 years. But there's concurrent activity that can go along the same time. So we don't do things sequentially, we do them concurrently.
Right. But I think where Mr. Noel is looking at is that we can do all that concurrent activity, but if we don't get those signed agreements that everybody's willing to pay up front, it might delay the project entirely.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. That's very correct. So the planning can take place, but the execution may be held up by the financing element.
Okay. Thank you. Conseiller Lalonde?
Just a clarification, because earlier on, and I don't know where the question came from, but I know that Monsieur Bourgon had mentioned 18 months to 2 years. It's something I wrote down, and have to empathize with Monsieur Noël's comment. That's what I wrote down. Was that not a number we were looking at earlier, a time frame?
Monsieur Bourgon?
That's for the construction piece only. So for the first shovel in the ground until we can use the system.
Right. So what essentially you're saying, we have to get agreements in place, how fast we do that, everything, and then once we're construction ready, once the construction starts, then it's 18 to 24 months. So the piece beforehand, how fast do we get all those lined up? Madame Tremblay?
If we could go back to the slide of the financial part, and again, I don't want to talk for Richard, but we need to move forward with option 3 to bring services. We need to have the 28 million in our pocket. So before having the 28 million in our pocket, we're not moving forward with services. That's what option 3 says. So the timing is all depending on how or when we're going to have that 28 million.
Right. 28 million based on current estimates. So what I'm hearing is my job is to go find 28 million bucks to get this moving forward. Correct? Because I think, as Monsieur Noel is standing back up, that is, I assume, serious concerns.
Well, it's can make changes for us, yes. So the other thing is the 119. If you go back to the first map. Yeah, sorry about that. So the 119 acres, because what's going to happen is the majority of people are just going to start buying the unserviced land and just build on that instead. So you're going to be back to just having no water and sewers. My question then to council is, the 119 acres, will that then have the caveat that we don't, if we sign, we never have to put water and sewers in, and we're not going to be extra taxed?
Yeah.
So, because that's, sorry, the expression, shit or get off the pot.
Exactly. So yes, in my opinion, I think the council has to make that decision, is that moving forward, we did have that clause in previous agreements saying if we bring services, you have to connect. I think we have to be realistic, is that we can't have that clause anymore, right? We can't put people in a position where they're going to spend $5 million on servicing their land, and then 2 years later, oh, we finally got there, yay, now you're going to pay. Like, that's a low below. So I think, you know, I'm comfortable with that personally, if we go that route. That being said, you know, obviously, my worry, and I'll be honest with Madame Tremblay, my worry is that we sell all our land. And then you come knocking at the door and saying, I need more land. But we haven't made an agreement, right? And now all of a sudden we're going to say, well, that 50 acres, I have people waiting to buy it unserviced. So we're going to sell it unserviced. We're going to continuously keep going down this road unless we say we're staying put until, you know, on that parcel, we're not selling anything until we service it. That's the reality council will be taking with option 3. Madame Tremblay?
I agree. This is the concern that I've expressed today and for when we've met with councillors, is that we need to have a time frame of when we say, for example, if we decide to not move forward with bringing services at 119 and 48 acres, and we decide to sell it without services, then we should have a target of saying, when 80% of those lands are sold, what are we doing if we don't have that 28 million in our pocket? Yeah. Are we keeping selling those, or we keep selling or forcing or trying to find money to move forward? Because we need to keep the momentum here.
Yes.
And that's my only worry, is that now we have a momentum. If we sit on those property until service are available or possible, then we are risking of losing that momentum.
A lot of moving pieces. So for me personally, I think we should option 3. I'm interested in hearing water capacity for the existing, definitely. Option 3, and you know, until such time that we get to a get off the pot, do it or get off the pot situation, we might be forced with a situation that even though we intended to service this area, we might come back and say, are we holding off? Are we stopping? Or are we doing nothing until we get those agreements in place? That's going to be the challenge. So, Councillor Tarnowski, Councillor Deakin.
I would just like to add my support to that in terms of, I really would like to explore the option for the water, certainly if not on the entire 331 acres, but the newest part of that acreage. I think it makes sense if we're already considering water sewer there. And then the other point I would like to make that Monsieur Bourdeau made and that Councillor Lorrain kind of brought up earlier on, I think if that truly is a concern, that $26 million, and then there's a requirement for mechanical on the lagoon side, it sounds like it should be discussed as well. And if that's the case, I'd like to understand why we're not discussing it, or that we do discuss it.
Thank you. Mr. Fon and Monsieur Bourgon, my understanding is that the expansion of the lagoon to a potentially a mechanical system will come regardless. That will come. What we're talking about here is that potentially the park could speed up those discussions, but it will come regardless, correct? So same thing with the City of Ottawa discussions, like these are all going to happen. Now, when we bring services to the park, you know, we're talking about 1,000 acres, but how fast are we going to sell that 1,000 acres based on Hempson? We're hearing that it's a 40-year timeline. So how fast will it actually speed up those discussions for water and a mechanical plant? Madame Tremblay?
Just want to clarify, the 1,000 acre includes your existing, right?
Right.
So it's less that, it's not 1,000 acres of new land to be sold. Because the 1,000 includes your existing of 331.
Right, so there's another consideration, right? We're talking about the build-out of the residential side is 450 acres. Well, we just took out 331. So it's really, we're talking about a difference of 120 acres, right? So there's a lot of numbers in play, right? But definitely, whether we service this park or not, we're going to be having discussions about expanding water with the city of Ottawa, and we're going to have to talk about the mechanical plant. So that is a reality. Councillor Deacon?
I'm just looking at the way that option 3 reads, and we're referring a lot to option 3. I don't think that what we're going to be looking at tonight in terms of a decision reflects exactly what option 3 says. Maintain status quo for existing section of the park, evaluate and move forward with full servicing for the sections of the park. And then it lists those specific sections raised at the beginning of the conversation. So just reflecting on when we're mentioning option 3 right now, is that what we're referring to, Mr. Mayor, or?
So we'll have to make amendments. If
Yeah.
there's amendments to be made, it'll be made during the resolution. So members of council will have to put amendments forward to that.
Thank you.
Councillor Larray?
I'm okay with the option 3. I'm okay with including the left-hand side stuff as well, the unserviced, if that's what council decides. What I would like to see, because we're doing things concurrently, is we have 331 acres of existing. We have 120 of those acres are we'll call it the old existing, and then we have about 221 acres of new existing. And the new existing, if I'm understanding correctly, is the ones that did sign agreements to purchase water and sewer if they were connected. We already know the cost. If it's just water for the 221, it's $20,000 an acre. If it's water and sewer for the 221, it's $47,000 an acre, right? On the other side, it's the same cost for the other 120 acres if they want water and sewer, if they want just water. Is there a way that we can get information to each one of them and get something back from them that says, yes or no, I don't want anything. I would like water and sewer. And I don't know if that's already been done or not, but
It's
with 47,000 and 20,000,
So,
like,
Mr. Fun
with
and
those numbers, is what
Madame
I'm asking.
Tremblay, was it done with those numbers?
So there was a survey that was done with the pricing, and they had to select. Most of the businesses said that they wanted to have water, but not pay the full price. So those are a result that we could share with members of council. Those options were evaluated. The only one that was not offered is only water in the park.
In the survey?
Yeah, but their range of prices were included as part of the survey.
Did 100% of the people respond?
No.
Okay, so we need to go knock on every door and ask and get that piece of paper from every single one of those business owners. I mean, if we can, and I apologize if I'm being very straight right now, but the fact is, we can send people to knock on doors to find out if they have dogs. We can knock on every one of those doors and get somebody to sign a piece of paper so that we, up here, get a full picture of, does the 120 not want it at all? They don't want anything? We exclude them. The 221, do they all want it? Do they not want it? What percentage want it? And then we can make a better informed decision at this table for that 331, which is not going to touch the other pieces that we're talking about of the new service that we want. At least it gives us a better picture, and that should not take that long to get the answer.
So
for the 331.
So just to confirm, however, the 331, that if they say they want it, based on all the information we have, they will need to pay that upfront. Township will not carry that cost.
100% agree.
Perfect. So just so everybody's quite aware of that, Mr. Fonin and Monsieur Bourgon also wanted to speak. Monsieur Bourgon?
I just want to remind council that we did an open house as well last year with those numbers.
Yep. And everybody was invited, and many individuals chose not to attend. again, communication is a two-way street, engagement is a two-way street. People want to be involved.
And the comment that we receive, we want them, but we want compensation with all the money that we've put in the ground. If I can resume really shortly comments that we received that day.
Yeah, and I don't blame them.
So, Mr. Mayor, so now we go out with exactly what I just mentioned. Here's the piece of paper, you're not getting any exemption. Here is the cost. Do you want it or don't you? I think it's plain, and I think it's clear as day at that point in time. There's no ambiguity to it, and we get 100% response. That's
Mr. Fonin, comments?
We serve at the pleasure, Mr. Mayor. This would add a number of months to this discussion. Thank you.
Allez-y.
Luc Thibault de Battle Shield, 347 Corde-du-Roi. Couple of things. First, anybody who wants to come and drink water out of my well, you're welcome. Or any other well that's in the park. I don't think anybody's got good water over there. It's very silky. I think everybody knows that. I think everybody pays to get water, for drinking water for all the employees for their shop. So that's the first thing. We don't have good water over there. I think it's just the ground that we have. The next thing is, I didn't bring my calculator and all this, but whenever I built the shop where I'm at, it's about $200,000 for us to put a tank in, put the well, and put the septic. I don't know how much, and that's on a 3-acre lot. So let's say even you put it on 5-acre, and I don't know if the people that are gonna be buying the new lots, if they're gonna pay a 200, it's money they don't have to pay if they have sewers and all that. So technically they should be paying, I'm not saying they have to pay $200,000 more, but if they don't go with water and sewers, that's how much it would cost them to put a small system in. I have a small system, I think, Dean would have a better price on bigger places. So I think we got, I'm gonna say we, because we talked behind the scene as owners of the newer section or even older, as $47,000 an acre when it was presented. We all got it's a big number after putting everything in the soil. If somebody would come to me and say you have to pay $20,000 an acre for the 5 acres you have, it's $100,000, plus I already put 200 in the ground, I would actually think about it. And having said this, is we represent 1/3 of the 1,000-acre, well, if you have the other screen, we represent 1/3 of that. So if you take the other $27,000, spread that over the remaining acres, it's $17,000 an acre. So it's actually cheaper to have, let's say us pay 20, put $17,000 an acre for everybody else that are not, that we haven't sold. And then I think I am just a number like this. I don't know if that's doable or not.
So, yeah, that's a good question.
For land that has not been developed, for
Right.
17 versus 200, that we had to pay.
Yeah, exactly. And I understand that 100%. And in private business, that would be easy to do. We'd be able to do that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, we have the Municipal Act that we have to follow, and the Municipal Act specifically says we're not allowed to bonus businesses. So is there ways around that? I'm not sure. That's a lot of investigation. But I understand the reasoning. You know, you guys have put a lot of money into your lands, into your systems. Somebody who's coming in who hasn't invested a penny gets it at a, essentially will pay the same thing with the current proposed plan. Or, sorry, if we were to do the option 1. So je comprends la possibilité, and I think that would be something to further look into in that regards. So, questions?
Questions, comments. Maxime Longtin with LRL Engineering. I
Oui.
represent a lot of clients here and some that are not here. For the option 3 that we're looking at, to be honest, 4 or 5 years, if we have a client which is within that boundary of existing, but are bordering that phase 3 or option 3, can they connect or they will not be able to?
So in that regards, that's Saint-Guillaume?
Yes, that's McEwen right there.
Right. So I'm not sure, it depends how the system would be designed, Monsieur Bourgon. I mean, that's part of the engineering plan.
Yeah, it will be, and at this time, it would not be we would not be looking at service those properties.
Yeah, so it's very much, if we're going to service that area, we're going to service it all, or we're not going to service it at all.
One or nothing for any of this. Yeah.
Pretty much. C'est beau.
I guess just to go back and I look at the design agreements that are currently in place with the 331 acres. This is about 200 of 331. My point before saying it at $25,000 an acre, we were shopping at the time. And that $25,000 was well below market value.
Yes.
And I understood that if we had purchased land rather than purchased an existing building, that I'm buying this at $25,000 knowing that I have an investment coming. And I'm signing an agreement saying that I am going to fulfill this.
So what you're
And
saying
now
is, sorry, so just to get to the point, what you're saying is your property that you represent, you want both services and you're willing to pay for it?
Yes,
Okay.
I am. But I'm saying, why are we taking, not saying taking in consideration, because we should always take everything in consideration, but why are the signed agreements, knowing that you purchased land at well below market value, and now you're saying, oh, well, now I don't want to invest it anymore. You knew that when you bought the land. So to me, we are letting them off the hook at the detriment of those of us who do want the services. And if I look at the amount of people that are here tonight that have stood up from the existing, the majority do want it.
Thank you. Okay. Conseiller Lorrain?
And just to be clear, that's the 221 acres when we're talking existing, not old.
I'm in the old, but I would be paying too.
So
They're in the old, they're in the 120?
Yeah, we're in the one. And we're both fully the
Okay, thank you.
Hi, yeah, Amit Zafir, 130 Warehouse Street. So as a new owner in the 331 acres, first of all, we'd like to say that we're eager to continue to partner with the township in the development of a best-in-class industrial park. But what I would like to say on that comment is, as a new owner who's currently going through the site plan process and eager to start construction imminently, I think having clarity on this situation would be imperative. The costs associated with water tanks and bringing both water and sewer to the site is exponential. So while I understand what you're saying, we're about to make a very large investment in bringing that, and while we would be willing to make the investment into connecting to services that are brought to the site, to make both would be very imperative to our project, just because of the inflationary costs you've seen in bringing the actual water tanks to the site, as well as on top of that layering to potentially put that in place and then connect to services in a 6 or 12 month time frame. That would be obviously very, very costly.
How many acres do you have, sir?
4.
4. Okay, yeah, so basically what you're saying is that you're investing all this money, and in 1 or 2 or 3 years, we're going around and saying you need to add another 200,000. You're not interested in doing that?
We're very eager to work with the township, and if the decision is made to bring services, that's something that we would be very open-minded to, but in order to do both in a short amount of time would be very, very imperative to our project.
Cost it. Okay, got it. Thank you.
So, yeah, Ian LaPlante, Level Steel, 129 Warehouse. So I just wanted to kind of, same thing with him. We, when we did sign all the agreements and stuff like that, we ended up having to put in the big system, and it cost us almost $500,000. So here we are, we're coming back around the corner, be about another $500,000 you're looking for an investment, so, yeah.
Hard pill to swallow.
Hard pill to swallow, right out of the gate. So yeah, we're kind of opposed to it. I mean, we work with the township, obviously.
Right. But here's a question for you. If you needed to expand in the future, would service land be interesting to you?
It's not necessary for us,
Okay.
for our industry, so.
Okay.
If it was there, it would be possible.
Perfect.
So the water, actually, our water, we don't have a problem with our water. We put in a good system, and we haven't had complaints with our system, with the water that we've got installed, so.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hello, Michel Blais, 140 Clément.
Oui.
My observation is when it comes to residential development in the township, it's not done by the township. It's done by a private company that hands off the property to a township after. Why is this township so adamant about developing the park and not letting a private contractor do it?
Good question. If a private contractor wanted to come up and say, we've bought 400 acres worth of land and we want to develop it, I'd have no issues with that whatsoever. But they can buy it off us, they just have to make an offer. It's that simple.
In everyone's business plan, when you're purchasing land and you're going to erect a building, you have choices to make. And I understand that, you know, costing $500,000 to put in a system into land that you purchased and then having to reinvest shortly after is a big pill to swallow. Yet that acre that you bought in this industrial park probably would have cost you 4 times that amount somewhere else for unserviced land. That was part of that had to be part of your business plan.
So I'm not going to start talking about other people's business plans. The reality is that all the landowners in that area, you guys are going to have discussions between yourselves. And they're not going to be easy discussions, but they're going to happen. Regardless, whether we decide to bring water to that section or we decide to bring both water and sewer to that section, nothing is happening until we have upfront agreements. It's similar when we had to build residential areas in the township. Nothing could happen until that lagoon was built. We brought water from the city of Ottawa, was great, but we had no sewer capacity, so we had to go see all the developers and everybody had to pay up front so we could have the cash flow necessary to do so. Now, I'm being honest here, this is a cash flow problem. We have this project, which is potentially $30, $40, $50 million, and we have another project, which is a recreational complex, which is another $90 million. Because we're doing both at the same time, we're maxing out, and that's the issue. So, council could always say, you know what, we're going to hold off on the rec complex 2, 3, 4 years while we get this done. That's an option. That's an option council has to consider. But, you know, that's as simple as that. I don't think I can make it any clearer, Mr. Fun.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Perfectly clear. Thank you.
So we have, Madame Tremblay, tu aimerais ajouter quelque chose?
I just want to mention that the comment that was made about the property owner that purchased property that has that agreement, it's not where our recommendation is coming from, right? We never had a position of people that had that in their agreement, and that's not why we're not recommending moving forward. It's about the cash flow for property that we own, the money that we have to put up front. So that's where the analysis is coming. So I don't want to make it seem like property owner didn't want to pay, or that's why we're recommending not to move forward with the full servicing.
Right, because realistically, if we owned no land, this would all be owned by private industry. We would be knocking at your doors saying to everybody, you guys are carrying the cost. This is your project. Similar on the residential side, when we go to an area and say, here, you're 30 homeowners, you guys want to connect to the system, this is what your cost is going to be. So that's where we're at right now. Conseiller Lorrain?
So I'm trying to rack the numbers in my head again, because we're talking about we need money up front to move and go forward. The cost of the project for item number 1, for option 1, is $47 million, but the $38 million is the borrowing needed on the properties that we own. Is that my understanding? And then flip side to that, the $5 million of the $28 million is on the property that we currently own? Because otherwise I'm confused as to what our borrowing capacity issue is if it's all going to be front loaded by others.
Well, that's it. If it's front-loaded by others, we don't have a cash flow issue. But if we have to carry that cost
Right.
and carry the cost of the complex at the same time, we can't, we don't make it.
Right, but you just made the comment a few minutes ago that if, on the 28 million, if we find $28 million,
Yes.
or we get that 28 million upfront, well, there is no carrying cost for us. There is no.
That's correct.
Borrowing capacity issue for us to move forward.
Right.
So similar on the 331, if we know who's, or the 221 plus the 120, if we know who wants to pay up front, and we get that cost up front at 47 or 20,000 an acre, whatever that number is, then that area could move forward.
Correct.
Okay.
For example, the 331 acres, if everybody paid up front at 47,000, then we're looking at 15 million out of a $45 million $48 million project. So we still have to carry $30 million unless we get agreements with everybody else. You know, and if we say it's only 20,000 for water, then we're at 6.6 million out of the 28 million. Well, actually, it's a little bit more because the 28 million doesn't necessarily include servicing them with water, so we're still short in the cash flow department. So that's why we need agreements up front from multiple areas. Monsieur Godin, j'ai-tu ramené tout ça ensemble?
Oui, je pense que oui, Monsieur Maire. C'est ça. Je veux juste mentionner aussi, like, we're talking about having agreements up front. We need cash up front to be able to award a contract for construction.
Right, unless we decide to delay another big project in the township.
That's right. And sorry, Madam Tomby, just to mention, so it is, like you said, a major cash flow issue, and the reason it's a big cash flow issue is because of those projects being paralleled concurrently, right?
Yeah.
And you mentioned it could be pushing the rec complex down the road. It could be waiting until the rec complex's financial plan has built itself up and pushing this down the road too.
Yeah. There is and I'll throw this out there, another possibility is because we're hitting our 25% cap from the ministry if we do these two projects concurrently. That is correct? We always have the option to going to the minister and asking to raise that cap with a financial plan that says we're able to do this. It's just we're going to hit our 25%. That is potentially, I know from a treasurer's point of view, that's not necessarily what you want to hear, but that option is possible.
I wouldn't recommend it. The rec complex is bringing us to 100% of it, or 98% maybe of the capacity. There is a mechanism to apply for an exemption. I would push towards more our 15% debt capacity that we've adopted in policy, but it is an option that exists.
Madame Tremblay?
And I just want to mention that we're talking about the cost that we're going to carry that for the property that we own, but there's property that we don't own as well that we would need to, that
Right.
are people using their property for crops right now that are probably don't have the intent of upfronting 100 acre at $47,000 an
Right.
acre. So that delays again, like if we find a way to carry our own cost, that's fine, but there's a lot of acres that we don't own that would need to have the upfront money from property owner that may not be in the
Interested.
development. Exactly.
Yeah, no, good point. Monsieur le Conseiller Lalonde?
Faut y aller, Monsieur Lalonde.
To your comment of earlier, Mr. Mayor, about, give me the number, I need to know the number in the 28 million. I think this would be a good point in time to mention, we're a great news story in this part of the province and, growing at 18% over the last 4 years and creating jobs and growing businesses. And I'm really looking forward, and I guess it'll take tonight's a decision tonight to help move that next step forward about getting the financial support I think that we're entitled to, that we deserve out of the province, out of grants and funding for what we're trying to do here, because it's growing the local economy, it's growing jobs, and we are a great news story. So I really look forward, and I think maybe for the sake of the public here tonight, because I know that you're working hard on that front, that I'm hoping that the relief that we're looking for in some of the options we're considering also includes some significant piece in terms of funding coming out of the the FedProv, and I'll leave that comment for you to expand on, if you will.
Am I trying hard? Yes, I am definitely trying hard to get money from the province, money from the feds. Not the easiest task, I'll be honest. It's, there's a lot of moving pieces to this. So I can say that I'm trying hard, but I can't promise anything at this point in time. So, there are conversations happening very high up in levels of government, but, it's still in the early stages. And until I see a check signed by a government agency saying you've got this much money, I have a hard time hanging my hat on it at this point in time, so.
My last time, I promise.
Question.
We mentioned that the water and sewers would bring opportunities for retail business. Would water alone do that as well?
Madame Tremblay, could we create a commercial, on se le cache pas, Plaza de l'Est, le bord, là, Train Yards of the East on Saint-Guillaume, could that be developed only with water?
Plaza de l'Est was not refused because of services, it was
Oh.
refused because there was residential component in
Oh,
it.
my
So
apologies,
just wanted to
before my
clarify.
time.
I was there, unfortunately. But yeah, partial services could also bring a retail component to be included.
Was not expecting that answer.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Good to know.
My very last question is I would like council to take in consideration water in the current 331
31 acres.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Janoski.
I just want to follow up on Councillor Lalonde's point. I think, we have been talking about these two very important projects, and they are very important projects to our community that has been growing exponentially. There's private partnerships that are available, certainly for the complex. I think there's opportunities there, and the grants. And I think that and I know that our HR plan addresses some of this for having a position for some person to go source this kind of money. But I think that's also a component of it. And it's too bad that we can't have all this information here. But I believe that there are opportunities out there, and we really need to bang on some doors to make that happen.
Thank you very much. Any other?
So we're talking about chasing money in order to be from potential partners or people that own land around there. If the existing landowners were included in this project, you would obviously be wanting their check up front. But, like me as one business in there owning 1.7 acres, I pony up the money and then nobody else ponies it up, or you get big chunks or big gaps in that funding and the project can't go forward. So am I expected to give you the money in trust? How's that gonna work? Like some people, existing businesses, they're businesses.
Yep.
So, and they exist, but there's parcels of land here. Landowners may never want to pony up the, $47,000 per acre for 100 acres.
Yep.
So what's gonna happen there?
So that's part of the analysis. That's part of the financial analysis coming forward. As we mentioned this evening, this is just the first step in a long journey. So moving forward, it is very much what I've heard is, and I agree that not everybody will agree to this, is in principle, we would like to see servicing moving forward for a section of our park. We'd like to entertain the idea that water only for the 331 acres as an option. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's both services?
To option it out, nothing, one service, both services.
Right.
And at least we know at that point, from everybody, not just a portion of the group. Everyone has to participate in that discussion and has to complete, not the survey portion, but an actual document that says yes or no.
Right. So I guess my question to that would be, we've tried that multiple times. If we do that and people are like, no, I don't want to sign a paper, I have no interest, and we only get 50% of the people to actually fill in something, where do we go from there?
Well, you just said it. They said no, not interested. boom, they don't want any
Well, so,
service.
so your assumption is that if they don't communicate with us, is that they're an automatic no?
No, knock on the door, every door.
Every door, there's people that own property in the industrial park that don't even live in this area, that live across the country, who have not been responding to emails, who have not been engaging with us. I agree that, yes, we can go knock on doors, but doesn't mean they're going to be answering. So my question is, are we assuming that's an automatic no?
Well, in that circumstance, I guess we would have to, but, I
So-
mean, they're in our industrial park, they're paying, somebody's paying taxes somewhere, we have to be able to get a hold of somebody. Like,
Here's a good question, Mr. Bourgon. Through the EA process, we notified all the property owners?
Yes, and I was gonna use another example. When we do residential projects, we ask everybody to vote. We never receive all the votes.
Right. We get, on a good day,
It would be in the in the 80s to 90%, depending on which
on a good
project.
day. Madame Tremblay, you have some numbers?
I have the survey that was done back in October last year to exactly discuss about the options of servicing, and it was sent to all the businesses in the park, and we had 26 answers.
Out of 82, was it?
82 plus the waiting list, plus the new purchase owner.
So roughly 25% of people took the time to answer our survey.
So the answer was, yes, we want services, and they wanted to pay less than $15,000 an acre. That was the answer.
For both services.
For both services.
A third. Again, the questioning of bonusing is, so. I mean, if it's council's wish to go through that process again, we can give that direction, but I think we've knocked on that door several times now.
that would be my request.
Okay. Any other questions? Members of council? Y avait-tu quelque chose à ajouter?
Pas après qu'est-ce qu'elle vient de dire.
OK.
All good.
Parfait. So we have a recommendation in front of us this evening. Recommendation that council receive report PD 21-2023 dated May 16th, 2023, and approve option 3 of this report. Now, we need a mover and a seconder to put on the floor, and then we can entertain dealing with amendments. So I need a mover and a second. Moved by Councillor Tarnowski, seconded by Councillor Lalonde. Questions, comments, amendments? Councillor Deacon?
I was just wondering if option 3 could be read officially. It appears worded in different ways in different sections.
So can you read the exact wording for the Madame Tremblay, or put it up on the screen, Louis? So option 3, I can bring it up here. So option 3, alternate water and sewer servicing model for currently undeveloped lands in the park. Area to be serviced. The existing park will be developed as is. C'est à page 28, je pense, du rapport. So areas to be serviced, the existing park will be developed as is, and the lands directly north of Route 100 and east of Saint-Guillaume will be further evaluated for both water and sewage servicing. Is that pretty much the resolution, or do you need me to read the timing, the opportunities, all that stuff too? No, so that's it. The area to be serviced, the existing park will be developed as is, and the lands directly north of Route 100 and east of Saint-Guillaume will be further evaluated for both water and sewage servicing. So we have it on the table with a mover and a seconder. What amendments would like to be proposed?
You can just put it up there.
Page 28. En dessous d'option 3.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'm going for almost 3 hours. Can we take 5 minutes, maybe look at our notes and see if there's any amendments we want to get done on there?
Sure, we can take a 5-minute break.
Thank you.
We'll give it 8, we'll come back at 9 o'clock. Thank you very much, everyone, for your patience. We will come back to where we were. We have a resolution on the table. Peux-tu le faire plus gros? So, the option is area to be serviced. The existing park will be developed as is, and the lands directly north of Route 400 and east of St. Guillaume will be further evaluated for both water and sewage services. We have a mover and a seconder to put it on the table. Amendments. Councillor Deakin.
I'd like to propose an amendment to evaluate water service to the existing 331 acres and evaluate as well full servicing around the 331 acres.
Okay. So we have a mover for that option. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Tarnowski. Questions, comments on those? Input from the administration? So just to be clear, so if we wanted, so we have option 3, which is 28 million. We're saying we would like to consider bringing water-only services to that area. And then we also want to consider basically all the virgin land that's north of east of St. Guillaume. Now, just to be clear, if we say that we want to bring services to those north pieces, we are saying we're not selling any land until such time as that decision is made. Is that correct, Madame Tremblay? Right, so the 220 acres that we have ready to go right now could be put on hold for quite a while. I just want to make sure that we're clear on that one. Madame Tremblay?
It will be put on hold.
It will be put on hold. So we're essentially, if we decide to service those parcels of land or investigate those parcels of land, no land will be sold until such time as the investigation is completed and brought forward to council. Mr. Fun?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And no construction would take place. So no, the
Right.
project would start with some initial planning, but would not move anywhere further until the land could subsequently be marketed again for sale.
Right. So might I make a suggestion? So let's break that down, those two amendments, into two different ones. So we'll have the first amendment for the water for the existing section, and then we'll make the second part of your amendment a separate amendment. Are you comfortable with that? So the first amendment would that if...
To separate it out, essentially.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you had made two statements, so the first one, we'll just keep them separate.
Okay.
So you're okay, seconder is okay with that? Okay, so let's deal with, we have an amendment to investigate bringing water-only servicing to the existing 331 acres. So we have a mover and a seconder for that. Questions, comments on that one?
Yeah, investigate meaning we're giving direction to staff to get that information, or is that what we're doing?
Yeah, Mr. Fawnin, Monsieur Godin?
Merci, Mr. Master. I'd just like a quick clarification. So in that particular scenario, we're talking about investigating, bringing water only to the
three.
existing, but continuing with option 3?
Yes.
With
So
the
at
full
this
service.
point in time, it is continue with option 3, but bring a financial plan for the 331 acres for water only.
I think that's clear. I mean, we can investigate that if that's...
It's an investigation stage, and that'll come back to council. That way, we'll be able to give a very accurate number to landowners to say, water is worth this much. If you guys want to get water, this is what it's going to cost you. Because we know that the 331 acres is existing, and that would be something they would require, and they would need to pay it up front. Madame Tremblay?
So would the investigation means that we need to have some sort of a percentage of owner that would agree, or?
No, at this point in time, I think you're referring to the financial piece?
Yeah, I'm using the word evaluate, not investigate.
Okay. So evaluate, it's not necessarily, it's confirmation of the cost to bring water to that area. Monsieur Bourgon, did you want to, or in your opinion, you have the cost?
And I just want to make sure that I do understand to which area, so.
Le 331 acres.
Okay, so option 2.
So it is, we're doing option 3, including option 2.
Okay.
Ben, c'est ça. Yeah. Ouais. Well, option 2 was water only, right?
Yeah, water only for the entire park.
Right, so we've already, for the entire park. So what we're saying is that, well, it's option 2 plus option 3.
If I can
Yeah,
clarify,
clarify.
the only thing that's left out of that in terms of the water, from what I'm seeing, are the two purple top left, 119 and 48, which you are looking to move on fairly quickly as unserviced land.
Right, so what we're saying is we would bring water to, not the purple areas, just the 331 plus option 3. Madame Tremblay?
I don't want to answer for Monsieur Bourgon, but we need to cross those two purple section with water to bring it to the existing 331.
So why not service that area as well?
Yeah, that's my point.
So basically bring water everywhere. So your position is to just do water for the 331 and ignore the others, correct?
Sorry, you split the amendments in two?
Yeah, so the first one-
amendment- So I presented it as a single amendment.
Right, so
Which
you're-
was water only for the 330 and full service around. That was the amendment. And then you split it, so
Right.
that's what made it seem like I was separating out the purple.
Right,
top.
so sorry, I just want to clarify then, when you say full, it's everything else besides the 331, correct?
Yes.
Because option 3 is not this map.
Option 3 is only south and the gold on the right.
Right,
Yeah, the
so-
blue. Thank you, Louis.
Yeah, so you're going to suggest everything else besides this. Okay, so Madame Tremblay?
Yeah, so if I understand correctly, we would bring services, water only to the 331 acre, and the rest of it will be fully serviced. That's the amendment that I think that Madame Deacon is proposing.
Well, the first part is the 331.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
there's 2 amendments, and the second one following that will be servicing everything else except the 331 with sewer, correct?
I lost my train of thought there. I apologize.
It's all good.
So the First Amendment would be 331 acres with water.
Yep,
What I mentioned was that the surrounding would be water and sewer. I would like to hear from my fellow councilors on the top left 2 pieces of land if we should, for that Second Amendment, if they would rather see an amendment that has the top left, top 2 western purple spots serviced or not, because that does depend on whether we're selling those lands
Yes, it
immediately or not.
definitely.
That's where the hang-up is, right?
yeah, so definitely.
So I'm welcoming comments from other councilors before we take a look at that, the
Okay.
Second Amendment, now that we're chopping it out.
Okay, so we have to deal with one amendment at a time. So how about we pull Amendment 1 off the table and deal with Amendment 2, and that should clarify Amendment 1. Which? Item 2 is to service, load map, Louis, this plus the 2 purple on the left. That's what you're proposing.
Thank you.
Is that right? Yes.
That's what I would welcome any discussion before I
Okay.
propose that.
So while proposed and seconded, okay. Councilor Lorrain?
So is the amendment the 417 plus the 100 and the 119 and the 48? Is that what you're saying?
Say that again?
Is what you're proposing is item number 3, which is the 417 acres at the bottom and up on the right-hand side, plus the 119 and the 48 in purple.
Yes, it's everything except for the green for the moment.
Well, when you say everything, there's 3 stars on the left that are not included in that calculation. So I just want to
Yes.
know, does it include the 3 stars on the left as well, or is it just the purple?
Sorry, just the purple. Thank you for
Okay.
clarifying.
Thank
So
you.
the 119 and 48 added to option 3.
Which is 417 at the bottom.
Yes,
And,
so that's the amendment that's being proposed. Councillor Tarnowski?
I just need a clarification, please. So the 3 starred areas are not land owned by us.
That's correct.
And in this particular amendment, if the water and sewer is going through there, would the assumption not be that they will be able to connect? Or are we still on the assumption, like if we add the 2 purple parts, is it not a fair assumption to make that if those lands are developed, we'll be able to add on to that? Like, I'm not sure why we're distinguishing, making sure that that's not part of it. I just want to be sure I understand.
It's not designated, that's why, right? But future,
But it'd be
No,
carrying,
it's-
it'd be carrying costs for us.
like, are we going to say to those landowners, your land is not designated, we don't know when it'll be designated, but we need you to pay 50, or 40, 30, whatever, thousand an acre?
I understand, yeah, of course, yeah, that makes sense, thank you.
Right.
I just assumed they were.
Yeah, so, okay, so we have a mover and a seconder for that one. I think Madame Tremblay, I just want to clarify, if we go ahead with what's being proposed, the 48 and the 119 acres available for sale that we have people ready to buy right now, stops. We don't sell to them, we don't move forward with those property sales. Yeah, so for me, I'm not ready to do that. If we have people ready to buy land now and develop land now, I'm not sure I want to strike that out completely. Councillor Tarnowski?
So clarification again, so that land, the 119 and the 49, 48?
48,
49,
yep.
Yeah, 48. If we decide to continue exploring the water sewer, so if we say no water sewer in those two parcels, those could be sold, but they'll never have water sewer in their contracts, the purchase contracts. The land will be sold at a non-serviced rate, and there is a demand for that. And if we go in a different direction, then we put a stop to that.
Is that
that
fair
accurate?
assumption, Mr. Fon and Madame Tremblay? I think everybody's saying yeah. So if we decide we want to service that area, then all sales stop until such time as we get further down into the analysis and where we're going and all that kind of stuff. Councillor Lalonde?
I'm sorry, needing clarification on the 119 to 48. So we have potential sales for that property on service right now. And just to be clear, that if we were to exclude this, let's say now, and those properties went ahead with the sale, we would be excluding in the agreements on those properties from those buyers from having to hook up later because of, obviously.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Deakin?
The dilemma that I'm seeing is that if we're bringing water to the 330, which we've heard a lot of folks tonight say that that would really help them and that they're really looking for that, we're bringing that through those purple segments. But that the development on those purple segments has to stop, even if we're just bringing water through there.
Madame Tremblay?
Then I would suggest to move forward with option 2.
Option 2, which is bring water everywhere.
Water, yeah.
Right, but then there's still the sewer component. Or is option, let me bring
No,
it.
option 2 is only water to all the entire park,
All the entire park,
Yeah.
the full 1,000 acres,
with water only.
with water only. You've mentioned that we're able to do commercial only on one service?
So currently through Mr. Mayor, the official plan of the county mentions that if, just a second, I have it here. It basically says that the county official plan does allow for commercial and retail or offices in the trade and industry area where full or partial municipal services are available. So yes.
Trade and industry, but commercial is the same thing, is trade and industry.
Yeah, so the trade and industry is what the designation that
What
we
you
have at
have.
the moment. So basically, if we would have the partial services would be only water, then the commercial and retail and or offices on his own would be permitted on water-only services.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
For Conseiller Lorrain?
So how much, I guess, we're talking a few years down the road for us to get all that in. How much capacity do we have, or do we have to go to Ottawa now to get additional capacity for all of the residential? Was it 400 and some odd acres right now that we have remaining of residential, plus the 1,000 acres here? Do we have that capacity?
So, Monsieur Bourgon?
For water only.
So we have the capacity to start and to service our existing boundaries. But for the expansion that's on the pending OP, yeah, we need to go to Ottawa.
But we'll have to go to Ottawa regardless
but
at one
just,
point in time.
Yeah, to move forward to service the entire park, we need to start, like, it's gonna be sooner than later.
I just don't want to be taking from one without having the knowledge that we're then gonna stop development on another side of the business. And that's, as long as
That's
we're not
fair.
doing that, then yeah, I mean, I'm okay with that then.
And if I can, like, that's part of our reporter challenge, right? It's to take capacity away from our residential to service the park, so that's.
Okay. And that, obviously, that would alleviate the potential treatment plant issue if we were doing water only. We'll have to deal with a mechanical plant at one point in time, but it won't necessarily be because of this decision here this evening. So again, we're looking at financial implications. Bringing water only on option 2 was $20 million for the entire 1,000 acres, correct? So it's 20,000 an acre. So we'd basically be going to, if we chose option 2, we'd basically be saying to everybody it's 20,000 an acre. However, we're still going to have to carry some of that cost, because even though we might be able to get the 331 acres, that'll be $6 million upfront. We're still going to have 14 million that we might have to carry if we don't get commitments from anywhere else. Is that correct, Monsieur Godet?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. So there's still that issue of cash flow for that 14 million or $13 million.
Right. At least it's better finding 13 million versus 28. We've already cut it in half, so that just makes it easier. Conseiller Lorrain?
And in that scenario then, we would be requiring everyone to hook up?
Yeah, we'd be requiring everybody to hook up at 20,000, yeah. So, Councillor Tarnowski?
I hate to throw a wrench into this, but what's the impact if we're developing all those 1,000 acres with water, and they all have their own service for sewage, i.e. like the tile beds and so on. So, we had a resident here that's got concerns, and so that concerns me a little bit as well. So is there an option where we bring the water and kind of bring the sewer a little bit closer?
So maybe Mr. Fawn and Monsieur Bourgon, obviously it's better to do water and sewer at the same time. However, in the future, if we needed to bring sewer, we would have that opportunity.
If down the road we decide to bring sewer afterwards, yeah, it would be always a possibility.
It'll just be, obviously, there'll be some increased costs
Exactly.
down the road. My only concern is with that is that if we're servicing water for 1,000 acres, not everybody's going to be on the same timeline, right? We're going to end up in the same situation where, oh, I just put in a tank 2 years ago. I don't want to pay for servicing for a septic system. Oh, I put it in 20 years ago. Now I need to change mine. Now I want that service. Yeah. Councillor Lalonde.
Just a clarification again, we're talking about, now everybody gets the water. Now we have the concern over the capacity to continue to supply enough water to the communities here for residential development?
New development.
New development.
New development but does this now bring us back to that concern in option 1 where with all that water, it puts the capacity for new development in the township?
So just to clarify, when we say new development, we're talking about the OP 450 acre expansion, correct?
That's correct.
We still have, currently, how many houses do we have before we hit that 450 acre expansion? Good question. You don't have the answer. No. Okay. So there is still a time frame. Like if we didn't apply, if the OP is not approved, like we're still building houses few years out, Madame Tremblay?
I think the question is that we will have to renegotiate sooner than
With
what
Ottawa.
expected. That's the bottom line. We need to negotiate at one point. This servicing the park we'll have to negotiate with the City of Ottawa sooner than expected.
Did. Right. Monsieur Godin?
Merci, Monsieur Mayor. And I apologize, I don't want to make us turn in circles again, but I just wanted to raise the comment that I feel like we're now pushing towards option 2 for financial reasons to reduce costs up front. But this option is the less financially feasible of all 3 options, long term.
Yeah, the return on the investment is lower with water only.
And I realize this project isn't an investment for return on investment. I just wanted to bring that up. The significant benefits financial for options 1 and 3 are essentially eliminated with this one.
And one of the reason why it is because we're keeping selling bigger property because the need of the room for the septic is still a requirement, right? So we're still selling big property because we're removing the well component, but we're still requiring septic.
Right.
Which is the mostly.
And every property that's building with a septic system obviously has to follow the ministry rules of environment on that capacity on their property land. They have to be able to.
Yeah, and the requirement now is that you have a full septic and then you have to have room for a second.
If necessary.
Yeah, so the land requirement for the septic is the most out of the water and sewer. So we still need to not maximize in a sense that the property will still be big.
Okay. Councillor Lalonde, then Councillor Ternosky. Councillor Ternosky.
So I'm a little concerned that we would have to stop selling land, so I'd like to be able to get out of that somehow. But on the same token, I think that as a council here, to kind of set a direction, and I think a strategic direction, and I know that there's definitely a lot of challenges on the how we get to that. So I would like to kind of go in the direction of servicing, certainly the water for our 331 and water sewer for the remaining. And I would like to go in that direction. But, you know, again, realistically, I don't want to stop selling if there is demand for unserviced land, you know. So how do we make that happen? How do we make that happen? Mr. Mayor, you said that you have a job in front of you to raise some money. I think that I challenge you to do that, and I think we need to do that.
No pressure at all. So based on the discussions, what I'm hearing is that we're comfortable with option 3. However, we want to bring water to the 331 acres. Correct?
Hold on. Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Sorry. 221, I agree with. 211. 211, I agree with, because they signed contracts that said they'd bring water and sewer. So if it's water, then water, yes, because I'm hearing a lot of people want the water. They don't necessarily need the sewer. Go with the water for the 211. But the 120, which is the old area, I think has to be evaluated separately, because they didn't sign contracts to commit to putting water and or sewer in those in their projects, and to force them to $20,000 an acre for water in that area when they never signed on for that. I think that needs to be evaluated and find out, I think it's 26 properties, is that what it is in that area? 120 acres, 26 properties? I thought that's the number I heard earlier.
Right. But it would not be unprecedented, right? As councillors,
it would not be unprecedented. However, we did exempt all residents from signing up.
Residential.
Yes.
Not commercial, and that was done for a specific reason.
I agree.
Yeah.
However, we did for their projects, but I'm only talking the 26 people or businesses in that 120 acre area.
I think then we start getting into a point, well, 5 of them want it, 6 of them want it, 5 don't want it. If we're going to service the area, I think we need to service the area, because we heard from several owners who are in that old part that are looking for water, right? So you know, eliminating, you know, a few that might not want it. Maybe it's 20, maybe it's 26, but I mean, at one point, we're going to have to make a decision on moving forward. So, Councillor Deacon?
Just a question to the administration as well on the 119 and 48 acres. If we were to put water through there to any sort of combination of the 330 acres, are those folks who are ready to buy today signing agreements similar to those in the western part of the 330 acres, whereby if water and sewer were brought to them eventually, they would sign on and cover the cost? They're under the same sorts of agreements.
So for the two purple parcels?
Yes.
So that's the discussion we had, is that if we want to continue selling that land, we have to take that condition out. We could keep it in there.
Not if we decide to pursue getting water in there.
Right, so
and
it could be
adding-
part of the
yeah.
contract is we're bringing water.
Because what I'm hearing tonight, you know, firefighting background in my family, is that as time goes by, getting liability under control for the industrial park is going to be a huge priority for us.
Yes.
So if we can't answer that tonight, if we know we want to sell those parcels soon, we bring the water through them, we begin putting it into the older areas anyways, I won't finish that thought, but we could leave the 119 and the 48 unserviced and begin bringing services into the 330, as well as evaluate what that leaves for the other sections.
Yeah, my concern with that is that, again, we're going to put companies in a position where they're ready to build. We're putting a contract on them that they're going to have to pay their share. But what happens if they build right away and they put 100,000, 200, 300,000 into a water system that they're not going to need? That's an area of concern, right? Because that's what we've heard, that they don't want to pay for private services only to be tacked on afterwards.
But it opens up the possibility so that 15, 20 years down the road, when that liability is no longer something that they can ignore, hey, we thought of you guys back then. We've got you. We can hook you up now. Here's what it's going to cost you.
Right, so I guess it would be from a caring perspective, we would be carrying that 119 and that 48 acres, we would be carrying that $20,000 per cost, because we would have to support them until the time they connect.
The water goes through it. It doesn't go through the lands, as I understand.
So, Monsieur Bourgon, so it would just be a matter of, would they be able to connect down the road if we brought the pipe through? I don't know if we have that answer at this point in time.
Well, if the pipe goes by, it's gonna be portable water, so they'll be able to connect.
At one point in time. It would be, essentially, it'd be like infilling down the road. It would be considered infill as far as our numbers go, because we would have a responsibility to connect them at some point in time. Councillor Lorrain?
Yeah, I think as one of the gentlemen mentioned earlier, I think for that scenario in the 119, 48 acres, whatever that is, I think the bigger question is, what are we selling that land for? What cost are we selling that land for? Are we selling it on the higher end unserviced? And that way, and then yes, if they're putting their investment in, then yeah, I guess that makes sense that we wouldn't force them to connect. However, if they're buying it at a rate that is currently, what are we selling at, 45,000 an acre right now? That's with the understanding that there would be a connection cost regardless of whether they've put money into the ground, right? So I right now, for me, I would say exclude it and continue building so we don't stall the development, because the development there, I think, is important, and I think we need to move forward. I think we have people that are ready to buy it and ready to put on it. I think you then exclude that clause from that area. And if they do end up wanting to connect down the road, then they cover the full cost of connection if and when that water comes through that area. So essentially, option 3 at the bottom with the servicing of the existing water in the existing area.
So the 331, the 119, and the 48 would have water services, and then option 3, everything else. Conseiller Tarnowski?
Again, clarification then. So we've been selling land quite regularly and really well. And in every contract that land got sold under has had that agreement. So why all of a sudden would we have to stop? If we've been doing it, we sold all these acres within the contract with the requirement to hook up. Why do we stop all of a sudden?
So it's because we have companies that have asked us. They don't want to, they want to buy in our park, they want to spend money down the road, they have to pay to connect to existing system. The new system coming in. That's the request at this point in time. Councillor Janoski?
But I understand, but again, we've had great success selling land with that clause in it. So why all of a sudden, and I understand the important land with that clause before, so I'm just not sure that us.
Concern that was raised when we sell that properties with that condition and that clause in the contract is that basically when the lawyer from the other party is coming to our lawyers, basically it's like you're giving a blank check, right? So that's where the worry is kind of, but when we said that that's the range of what they would have to pay, then they move forward with it, but that's the only risk of when you're not certain of the cost that it would cost you. It's kind of you're signing a blank check by
Right.
signing the agreement with the.
And I'll give you the
condition.
perfect example. We know that servicing the whole thing is $48 million. And we decide, you know what, we're not going to service, we're just going to service a 331. And there's 200 acres in there that are forced to pay the exorbitant amount because of the way the contracts are written, right? There's no top out. We could say it's 100,000, you have no choice, you have to pay 100,000. So I mean, we have to give some direction this evening, so. Councillor Janoski?
And I'm happy to give direction, but that still doesn't clarify how we were able to sell a lot of acres so far without that issue, and all of a sudden today we're told we have to do a full stop.
Well, it's for companies who have indicated they want that clause taken out or they're not going to be buying in our park. So, it's, Councillor Lade?
Isn't it at this point now that the
Owner in the park, depending on whatever decision or option, we need to have that upfront money. If it's option 2 or 3 or whatever, we need everybody upfront money before we decide to bring the services.
Right. So option 3 on its own is basically, peux-tu mettre la map, s'il vous plaît? So the 150 acres, the 41, the 226. So we know that is option 3. If we just say the 331 or the 220, add the water to that. At least we can continue selling the land, and moving forward. I think that's the point the administration wants, is it wants to continue selling that land today, but it's also providing an option for us to start working on the servicing. That's what option 3 is. Now, we've heard from the existing area that water is a concern. So can we move forward with option 3, giving direction to the administration to concurrently work on bringing water to the 331 acres? Is that potential?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. From an analytical perspective, yes. Whether it's feasible, we would have to do a study to find out if it is feasible. So that is what we call the unknown unknown.
Right.
So we can take the direction to do the assessment, but it may come back as no, because it may be too difficult technologically to move it that way, or it may result in option 1, effectively, which is the original $48 million to service the whole thing. To service individual elements within this would not be financially feasible.
Okay. Councilor Adel?
Well, I'd just like to say I would support what you just proposed, which is the option 3 with the feasibility study on the water for the 331.
Councilor Lade?
Yeah, I think what we lost sight of a few minutes ago is that we actually have an amendment on the table that we have to vote on.
So,
and then we can get back to what we're doing, unless the people who put it on the table want to remove it from the table.
Councilor Deakin?
I'd like to withdraw the amendment.
Councilor Janoski, in agreement? So the amendment, so now we're back up to option 3. Yep, Councillor Deacon?
Would it be a direction to administration on the feasibility of the rest, the water? Yeah?
Yeah,
Okay,
it's a
thank you.
direction. So we could give that direction, Mr. Fawnin. We're moving forward with option 3 with a direction to continue to evaluate bringing water services to the 331 acres. Councillor Tarnowski?
Isn't that evaluation already done in option 2?
Option 2, I believe, is for the full 1,000 acres. So therefore, we're only talking about 331 acres.
Plus.
But that's.
So the only exception that we have is the other map there for a second.
So,
Yeah, so the 417 plus the 331, so we're looking at about 800 versus 1,000
for water. So, but that could be fairly quickly.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. It's, we'll evaluate it, but it's kind of there already, right? Yeah. I'm okay with that.
Are we okay with that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just looking at the map as we see it there, what's being discussed by council is to service the southern edge, possibly servicing water only with the 220 of the 331, not servicing the 119 and the 48 to allow us to pursue the sales. If you look at the map, you can see that that's a little odd.
Yes.
So from a technical feasibility, we would have to reevaluate this to make sure, because it may be a bit, all I can say is odd. So,
You're just leaving.
yeah, you're leaving an orphan set of lands there just by themselves, right? So, yes, we can do it.
So I guess the question would be then, well, the issue is, do we want to stop the development? If we don't want to stop the development, then we have to move forward with option 3, right? I think that's, it's nice to have all these options, but that breaks down, right? If we want to go with option 1, which is service everything, that we know that's $48 million, we could potentially say we're not going to service the 331 with sewer, right? But again, but then in this map, the 3 stars on the right are not being serviced. Correct? Madame Tremblay? Like, I know the recommendation is option 3 because we have everything on Saint Guillaume.
Like, I'm not sure I should say that publicly, but I think we heard the concerns of the existing, and we heard what council wants, and there's so many options that were thrown to us that we were not really sure of. Like, I think we all heard what the preoccupations are, so I would strongly suggest that we don't make a decision tonight.
So here's what, great suggestion.
Merci.
Right? I think we've heard from council that Ottawa is out of the picture. I think everybody agrees on that one. We want some kind of servicing for our industrial park. Right? Everybody shaking heads. We want to continue with the land sales. We do not want to slow that down. And the existing owners, for the most part, or for a certain percentage to be confirmed, are asking for at least water. And then the 5th one is that those who are looking to develop on that 119 and 48 potentially don't want that item in their contract. I think that's fair to say. Yes? So then, from the administration side, you'll go back. Timeline? Or Mr. Fawnin?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We haven't actually discussed this yet, so that wouldn't have been my recommendation. I would have recommended we go with option 3 with an idea to continue assessing. But if we want to defer this conversation, it would be deferred likely at this stage of the season. We'd be deferring to the early fall.
Right. So I think we have option 3 on the table. My opinion, move forward with option 3. The administration has heard our concerns, comes back at a later point in time with options on how we can move forward. So, Councillor Deacon?
Just procedurally, we're voting tonight on option 3.
If council chooses to do so, yes. Or
And
we
my-
can,
That's my understanding, is that we're voting tonight on further evaluated for both water and sewage servicing in the blue, thank you, Louis, and that we are giving direction to the administration to run feasibility on water in the 330, or a combination of the two
so,
parts of
so we
that.
haven't made that amendment yet,
Yes.
right? Have we
I
made
don't,
that
I'm not
amendment?
I'm not hearing an
It's a di-
amendment.
No, that's the direction, is that we're going forward with option 3, and we're giving direction on what we've just discussed.
Thank you. Thanks for clarifying.
So we're still on option 3. Questions? Further discussion? Councillor Tarnowski?
I'm just disappointed if we go through option 3 and leave the other one off the table. And then when we put the 330 or the water on the table, then I agree with Madame Tremblay that it kind of doesn't make sense. And so I feel that we should be making a decision here at this stage. I would propose an amendment. I'm not sure how to word it, but I would propose an amendment in the direction of servicing water sewer as was previously presented, but come up and look at a solution to still continue selling some of the land, come back with something. I just feel that we've spent all this time so far doing this, and if we just go back with essentially option 3, which to me, option 3 means we're really not doing anything until everybody agrees that they want water and sewer, so essentially means that we're not really doing anything.
I think that's with any scenario. We don't have the cash flow, so any scenario
I understand.
we have to have everybody up paying
But I
upfront.
understand, what I'm looking for, what I would like to see is for us to give some direction for this to move forward, for you, Mr. Mayor, to go look for some additional financing, see if we can close the gap, understanding that in a perfect world, if the cash flow piece wasn't an issue, I think we would all agree on the direction we want to take. So why do we not go in that direction and then solve our cash flow problem? And if we can't solve our cash flow problem, then we can address how that impacts our decision.
Mr. Fondon?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Correct me if I am off on this, but I believe that going forward to look for sources of funding, particularly at other government levels, you need to have a plan. And right now, we don't have a plan because we don't have direction. So we need direction and the beginnings of a plan to then go forward for funding sources to support an existing plan that we would have in hand.
Councillor Deakin?
I'm hearing Mr. Fonnen's comment, and I just want to clarify, will be further evaluated for both water and sewage servicing. That means that we're going to take time to have those, the administration is going to take time to have those conversations, get that buy-in, approach different levels of government as well. I see that all in the word evaluate for option 3 already. I see that clarity and that step forward.
Yeah.
And the feasibility on the water servicing, I see that also as a step forward. At the beginning of this evening, I don't think that I'm speaking for myself, I was not looking at that option number 1 because we knew that it was not financially possible, that it was beyond. And I think that this gets us closer to 2 of those options. And I'm confident in the option number 3. With the understanding that the word evaluate includes all of this negotiation that needs to happen and collaboration and connection that, again, going back to our vision, is part of what we're committed to in this term with our strategic plan.
Right. But option 3, continuing with those evaluations, are we continuing with the sale of the existing, the 220 acres? Are we putting a stop to that or not?
That's not in option 3. That was part of an amendment that I withdrew earlier.
Right, but that's what I'm saying is from Madame Tremblay's perspective, if we're going to continue evaluating the other options, are we going to put a hold on the sale of those lands, or are they still moving forward?
No, I would not support that.
Okay. So we're moving forward with option 3. Councillor Lorrain?
Yes, if that's the question you're asking me, but.
No, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, no, my simple question was, we talk about going to seek all this other financing and all this other money, But you said earlier that we can't subsidize the business owners. So who is this money going to? Is it covering our cost for the land?
It's to have the cash up front. It's to.
So borrow, not grant? Is that what we're looking at? Going to the government for borrowing the money?
We need a grant. We need a grant. So, for example, best case scenario. Best case scenario. For example, option 3 is $28 million. We get $28 million from the government as a grant. Nobody pays a penny and we're moving forward and it's done.
And I thought you said the municipal act doesn't allow us to do that.
It's a grant. If the province gives us a grant to move this forward, that's a completely different story.
Okay.
No,
from what you said earlier, I was confused, but if
from the
that's the case.
From the municipal side of things, and it would be part of the discussions and clarifying if we were able to say, we're giving you a discount, but we're charging somebody else more, is that potentially, that's part of the investigation.
Okay, so I'm okay with moving number 3 at this point in time, and then giving direction for other aspects, but not holding up any of the sales in 119 and 48.
Okay.
That's where my head is right now.
Okay.
Which is, I think, exactly what staff is proposing.
All right. So we have it on the table. Do you want to lay it on the table?
It's already on the table.
Well, I mean, do you want to call the vote? That's what I'm asking.
Oh, are you asking if I'm calling the question?
Yes.
Yeah, call the question.
There we go. So we have option 3. Staff have understood the direction of council in regards to things we would like possibly investigated. So now it's called for the vote of option 3. All those in favor? Opposed? Option 3 it is. With that, confirming bylaw, that bylaw 2023-060, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Russell and a special council meeting on May 16, 2023, be read a first, second, and third time and passed. All those in favor? Opposed? Oh, I need a mover and a seconder, sorry. Mover and a seconder, moved by Councillor Deakin, seconded by Conseiller Lorrain. Everybody's in favor. Our next regular public meeting of council will be held on Tuesday, May 23rd, 2023, and we are adjourned at 9:51 p.m. Thank you very much, everyone.